Welcome everybody to Tuesday Night. I'm your host, MC Toon, and tonight I'm reviewing the fact that the globe won again. The globe predicted the path of totality of the eclipse, the time, the totality, just about everything of the eclipse, and nailed it. And Flat Earth got exactly nothing. I am going to jump right into showing you some of the things that I got, because I went to the eclipse in Texas. I was in Bogota, Texas. This is what I saw just before the eclipse. I was worried. But then I looked. I looked where the clouds were coming from, and it cleared up a little bit. And then this happened. But let me show you this. This right next to me, sitting just right behind me, was Sarah Hutto, who's in the live chat now. She was there with her dad, and she had a dwarf, I forgot the particular model, dwarf something telescope with two cameras and tracking, and she was running it from her iPad. It was really cool. And this was one of the, I got a bunch, she sent me a bunch of pictures. So there's this one, you can see the prominence there at the bottom, the corona there. And then let's see. Oh, this one, this is my favorite. Look at that. That's so cool. And then here she made a composite of all of them. So cool. And this is my favorite of, I've seen a lot, but I was right next to her when she took these. So Sarah, thank you very much for sending these to me. I love them. They're so cool. So anyway, so she's in the chat. Welcome. Dwarf 2 is the name of the telescope. I introduced myself. We got to know each other a little bit. She was there with her dad, who's also an astronomy enthusiast. And it was just really cool to have somebody there right in the middle of the path of totality for the whole 4 minutes. But I'll review a few more that I took. So it did clear up. We had the entire totality, and the rest of the eclipse was maybe a couple later, but for the most part, it was clear. The rest of the time, it was just perfect. The people that are like, I'm not going to go to Bogota, I'm going somewhere else. Well, I hope you still got to see it, because we did. All right. Well, this is the one, a photo I took just after first contact. And the cool thing about this is I had the Solar Eclipse Timer app, and I bought the little extra package so that you can have it tell you what time stuff happens, and it comes on. It gives me a notifications. I fire it up. I'm looking through the P1000 camera with the solar filter on, and it says first contact in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I look at the camera, and this is just a little bit after it, and there it is, first contact, right. Just nailed the timing. How does that happen? Well, you have to really understand how far away the moon is, how far away the sun is, and exactly where they are, how big they are. There's so many things you need to understand right in order to predict so precisely. And this is what's called, I don't know do you see it? Do you see it right there? The sunspot. So that sunspot, everybody saw the sunspot. Think about this. If the sun is close and local, then depending on where you are in relation to the sunspot, you'd see a different portion of it. So if you are in Texas, you'd see it in a different place if the sun were close and local versus Maine. But do you know what? The people in Maine saw the sunspot in the same place because the sun is far away. It's not an ISS transit. All right, well, here's a couple more as it goes in. And now this is a video. This is a video I took, and you'll hear I'm talking to Bob, the science guy. So Bob and I did an experiment where we can measure the distance to the moon and the distance to the sun based on the amount of time that elapses between second contact, that's when the moon is completely blocking the sun, until he sees first contact. He was in Indiana. And since we know the distance across the surface of the Earth, and we got the timing down to the second, we can do a little geometry and know the distance to the moon and the distance to the sun. So be looking for that on his channel. I don't know exactly if he's got it yet or not. He was struggling with a few things, but he did get some stuff going. I think he had trouble, like a lot of people, he had trouble with internet access there. So, all right, let's see here. All right, so there's a bunch of kids around. I'm going to fast forward to 10 minutes and 43 seconds, and then we'll play. And you can hear me giving him a countdown. And the one thing that did not come through, I thought it would, the app that was giving me the countdown to second contact, it got it correct, right? But I was not listening. I mean, I heard it, but I was telling Bob when I say mark when it's completely covered. So that's what you're going to hear me talking about, and the timer got it, just nailed it. Jeez. For some reason, it restarts when I pause it, so I won't pause it. But then it doesn't play. What's going on? I tested this. Totally did. You hear that kid every time. 2 minutes. All right. The sliver is just shrinking. I've got hydrogen alpha on for some reason. So cool. The main camera's not working. Wow, it's so weird. So the prediction says 60 seconds. Oh yeah, you heard the app. Yeah. 60 seconds. That's the prediction. Oh, jeez. All right, I'll let you know when it goes. All right. I'm waiting. Approach. See the difference right already? Oh yeah. 25 minutes. Going to be in Texas in about 20 seconds. Yep. There's a star. There's a star right there, guys. There's a star. There's a star or something. You can't see that. Look at this. It's dark. 15. I can see it. I can see the. Oh my gosh. I'm looking at the sun right now. Oh my god. Oh my god. Guys. Look at this. Look at the clouds up here. Mark. Oh my gosh. There you go. Now it's just black after that, so that's not very cool anymore. But I think I said mark when the timer was at like between 2 and 1. So there you go. Just and it's so weird. There's during Totality with the no more solar filter on. And so somebody was at Earthrise was asking, did I see Venus? Well, this will answer it. Let me get this zoomed in a little bit here for you. So there's where we were. There's a different camera filming. And oh, there's Venus. Look at that. This is on my phone. It's so eerie because, you know, the phone is auto adjusting for exposure, but it's dark, you know. There, it lost focus. There you go. It's just so cool. All right. And then I'll get a few of these here. So again, this is with the P1000. And there you go. You can see on mine the prominence here, right there, there, there. So what I did is I was trying to get with the P1000. I was trying to get the features of the moon. So I was doing bracketing. I turned the exposure up two steps and then did bracketing, and it couldn't do it. You can see on this picture here some of the internal reflections in the lens. It's an absolute mess. The camera cannot handle it. So yeah, it's kind of too bad the P1000 couldn't, but other people could. So let's see here. I'm just going to show a few of the cool pictures that some other people got here. A lot of people sent me pictures in no particular order. Thank you for sending them to me. I'll show you a couple cool ones when we get to it. There it is. A lot of these are with phones, of course, because everybody's got a phone. Oh, that's not a phone, I don't think. That's nice. There you go. I don't know what's off to, maybe that's a plant or something off to the side. There you go. See the same sunspot. There's during totality with some clouds. There you go. That's John Brimstow, Jan, maybe. So I just collected a bunch and then just posted them in no particular order here. So, oh, there you go, totality. And then the really cool ones, I had asked if people could get some ahead of time. Oh, here's from Facty. Thank you, Facty, for these two. We got, let's see. We got Mike Burnham. There you go. We got this. And now the thing that I had asked for people, if they could, was to get a single frame photograph of the moon properly exposed so you could see the features of the moon. So, and those are difficult to get. But I got some people sent some. Let me see if I got them here. There it is. All right. So let's see. This is not a single frame. This is stacked, right? Which is not CGI. Flat earthers are like, that's CGI. It's not. It's just stacked. So it's done so it looks nice artistically. This is from Rami Astro on, I think, Instagram. And there's another one again. I think both of those are stacked. But Astronomy Live got non-stacked. Just sent single frame right there. So this one is a single frame, and you can see the features of the moon in that one. And then one more. Yeah. So this is the good one. This is yeah. Battle Against Misinformation says dumb Dearth said the moon went behind the sun. If the moon went behind the sun, then why do you see the features of the moon? Stacked, PJCnet stacked is digitally manipulated, however. It is, but that doesn't make it fake. So anyway, it doesn't matter. Right here, you've got the non-stacked, non-edited, just how the camera got it, and everything else is overblown. So it's not artistic, and that's why people don't generally do that. But there it is. That's Earthshine. You can put that up next to a full moon picture, and you can see the same features. If you look over on the right side, there's the I don't know the names of the ones that you're seeing here, but the mare whatever, different ones. So now if you do have if you have, or you know somebody that has a single frame photograph of it, I'd love to get it. And ideally, this is the ideal, directly from the camera, raw photo, not the JPEG version, not run through and had exposures set so that it looks right. Just the raw photo as the camera picked it up with EXIF information. That's what I really would love to have. If you got it, or somebody, just send it send it on to me. Effed up world. Joe Hill says, nice footage. I'm calling you Pastor Mike from now on. Thanks. So anyway, that was the Eclipse. It was something. It does. You hear about it, you say go, you hear people say go, you watch videos of it, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Real Cygnus' Reds and Astronomy Live have the raw available. That's good. Yeah, I'll get that from Astronomy Live. Oh, the one, if you can, even better, video. If you can get video that where you can actually see the features of the moon, that would be even a step better. That'd be really cool. So if you know it, that of course may require modifying the exposure, but if the data's there, then the data's there. So anyway, I went to not just the Eclipse, I went to a bunch of other things, and so I met a bunch of people, and I just want to say it was great meeting all the people that I met. I will intentionally not give all of your names, but I want to list off some of the people that I met. I met Mr. and Mrs. G from Paris, France, and we met in Paris, Texas, the day before the Eclipse. We went out to eat, and then we went to the the Eiffel Tower in Paris, Texas. Not quite as big as the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. I climbed up on it. Mrs. G climbed up on it a little bit, and then we were told to not climb up on it. There were kids climbing on it, and me and Mrs. G were climbing on it. Until a big person said I can't climb on it anymore. So, King Crew, I had your book with me the whole time. I was looking for you. So anyway, we had a super, super awesome time with them. It was such a good time to meet them in Paris, Texas. Then at the Eclipse, one person came to say hi to me. They went somewhere else. But David, thank you for stopping by. I got a picture with David. And then we went on to Colorado, and I spoke at Will Duffy's church. I did a debate with Joe Hill, who's in the live chat right now. And what's this shirt? So I'll tell you about that in a little bit here. And then on Sunday morning, I spoke at the church, and it was a presentation on how the Earth cannot be flat and how we know that the Earth is a globe. Anyway, this is the shirt. This is actually the shirt I wore during the Eclipse too. It says, of course, the Earth is flat. You got the elephants on the turtle. And it says, how else would it stay on the turtles? So there you go. Anyway, all right. In Colorado, I met Joel, who I've been talking with on Facebook Messenger for a while, doing some different stuff with, and his wife. Great to meet them. They just had gotten married a little bit ago. She moved here from Australia. I met Phoenix and Robert Greenlee. If you know him, he's on Facebook, and he's been on my channel debating. I've hosted debates with him a few times. Great to meet him. We talked a little shop about our campers because we were camping, and he said he was had been working on his camper earlier that day. Let's see, I met Scott. I'm not giving last names unless they've already given it. Scott was the tech guy. He did amazing. Joe Hill, it was great to meet you again and your friend Thomas. And Dave. All right, Dave helped out. He had messaged me ahead of time and contacted Will and did some things to kind of help facilitate things. And then especially Will Duffy and his whole family. We met his whole family. My daughter came, my wife came, and we had a great time. Will was just an excellent host. It was so nice to be there. And it was just made us feel comfortable and welcome. So thank you so much. So to the debate. So Joe Hill was there, who's currently in the chat here. It was a great debate. It's currently posted on the Agape Kingdom Fellowship YouTube channel. It's going to be edited a little bit to get the audio fixed because there was some audio mistakes, but they recorded everything, so they're going to redo it, and then I will probably mirror it when they do that. And hold on, I left it last on purpose because Stringer News 1 was there. Stringer News 1 had sent me an email. He said, "Hey, I have a P1000 and I don't use it, and do you want it?" I said, "No, that's too much. It's too expensive, too kind. I can't." Well, he brought it, so I got to meet Stringer News 1 in person. He came both days, and then the dirty dog gave me this. So I gave Joe Duffy his camera back. Not Joe Duffy, Joe Hill. And then minutes later, Stringer News 1 gave me his not hardly used P1000, still in the box here. I haven't had a chance. We just got back this morning. Stringer News 1, thank you so much. Very kind. Over the top. So I will put it to good use, liberating more flurf tears. So anyway, yeah, super nice, super kind of him. So anyway, I was only without a P1000 for a few minutes. So I will definitely be using it even more. So anyway, the Sunday morning presentation. Now I probably won't be mirroring that. That presentation and variants of it is what I will be giving in person. So if you want to see it, you can book me to your place, school, church, Lions Club, the whatever it is. If there is an interest in understanding how we can know the Earth is not flat, how we can determine what shape the Earth is ourselves, what different people have done to measure the shape of the Earth. So I'm this was my first, and I put together the presentation, and then I can cater it to different people. So if you want to see that presentation live, you can email me mc200@mc2.net, or mc2.net has different contact info. I've already been somebody in Wisconsin has said they might be interested, in a couple months. So anyway, I'd love to. So that's all I'm gonna say. I don't know. If you were there, I want feedback. So Stringer News 1 and other people, send your feedback. What did you think? What did I miss? What should I spend more time on, less time on? There you go. Marcus Wynn, there are better options as cameras are concerned. You're right. This camera is the flat earther camera of choice. So what better way to liberate flurf tears than by using their camera? So I actually, in the debate, I used I used photographs that I took with Joe Hill's camera to show that the Earth cannot be flat. So thank you for that, Joe. Sure, gonna just wait till I find out there's only bricks in the box. Okay, I gotta get me some tab going. All right, love me some tab. So, all right. I'd asked a couple flat earthers if they wanted to debate tonight, specifically on Facebook, and they got scared. They got a little scared. But I'm gonna have someone come on in a little bit, but shortly, I'm gonna show you what we picked up on the way back from the eclipse. It'll be kind of interesting, but I want to really press this in here. Flat earthers, you can't predict an eclipse. You can't even explain how somebody knows the basics of an eclipse, whether or not it's going to be a full eclipse, an annular eclipse or a total eclipse. You can't even determine that. because that requires knowing the distance to the moon and knowing the distance to the sun, as well as knowing how big they are. You don't have that. So when flat earthers are like, oh, they predicted eclipses for a long time. No, they didn't. They couldn't do that. Saros cycles are not based on geometry. It's simply a repeating pattern, but they do love to spew the lie. So let's see. Professor Parks PhD says, if you need, I can contribute to that experiment. I have both white light and hydrogen alpha vids / images of the eclipse. Oh, that'd be cool. Especially if you can see features of the moon. That's the shut the hell up flirfs shot. Right? Because I don't know if you've seen on Facebook, they're all like, well, we didn't see the moon before it started blocking the sun. Well, that's the prediction for the globe. It's a new moon. It's not illuminated by the sun. It's only illuminated by earthshine. It's not bright. The sun bright. Moon not bright. So if you have a picture of the moon that where you can clearly see the features, you cannot rationally deny that it's the moon sitting in front of the sun. And that's how Flat Earth Dave proved that he's not rational, because he said that whatever's blocking the sun is behind it. He's stupid. He's stupid. Think about how dumb they are to deny when you can see the features right there. You can see the actual features of the moon. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so let's see here. Just a second. Oh yeah, we got something. We got something coming. It was rated R. Said Joe. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Ever get Nathan to agree to set a date for measuring the lake? I have not talked with him yet. So it was nice, and then it got cold again, and then I went on vacation and everything. And if you noticed, Craig and I haven't even gotten the top left thing put together yet. It's been busy. And you know, Craig keeps hurting himself. Somebody's got to tell him to stop hurting himself. He fell the other day, hurt his eye. I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I love Craig, and I poke fun at him, and we jab each other back and forth in DMs all day long. But yeah, I mean, I told him I sent a picture of a helmet with a propeller on top. I said I need his address because I'm gonna ship him one. Craig, get better and stop hurting yourself. So anyway, all right. What is going on? I had to yell out the door so that the thing that we picked up on the way back from the eclipse can be delivered to me. Let's see. Well, I know, like Stringer is one knows. Don't tell anybody. So, oh, here comes. Here comes. Right, bring it around here. All right. There we go. This is Donkey. So on the way back from the eclipse, on the way to the eclipse, this is the funny part. We're going to the eclipse, and there's this farm that has some donkeys in next to it. And we're driving, and my daughter goes, the next pet we get, I'm going to name Donkey. And then on the way home, just on the other side of that farm, there's a sign on the side of the road that says, free puppies to love. And my wife is like, oh, we got to go look. I'm like, are you serious? If you go look, you can't not take one if it's free. So anyway, we go. They had 5 puppies there. Oh, look at him. They had been abandoned in the ditch, and this nice couple got them, brought them home, got them healthy. They had 4 or 5. The number isn't critical. Anyway, my daughter went outside with them, communed with them to figure out which one which one to get. And so this is the one right here. He's been super good. He rides in the car so well. Yeah, he's super calm. Yeah, and he's almost all black. He's got a little bit on his chest, but he's floppy when you hold him. So anyway, donkey. How's it spelled? Doncii. There you go. My kids spelled it today. So there it is. Thank you, donkey. And donkey and penguin are already playing. They just love playing with each other. There you go.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So there it is. Yes, Eric Burns spelled it right. Brenda, yeah, it's the silent K. This was not my choice. I mean, I started that trend by spelling the things weirdly, but this was my kids doing continuing that trend. So there you go. All right. So that was that. So I've got something coming up here. Somebody that works on airplanes and is going to share some information. So this is going to be good. All right. I need to clear up a few things here. So I have all those tabs. Oops. Open. Let me I'm closing the tabs and drinking tab at the same time. Imagine, just think for a second. Flat earthers can't predict this, and yet they still believe the earth is flat. Anyway, okay. I am going to grab this here, and got someone coming in that's going to talk about stuff here. Where'd it go? All right. There it is. All right. Oh, Professor Park sent some cool ones already. I'll collect those later. So anyway, let me get this Zoom set up. And so I sent the link there. So this is if you ever wanted to know how airplanes work and how they determine rotation, this is the one for you. So now while this is coming in, so we left Colorado yesterday morning. Actually, it wasn't even hardly morning. It was kind of late in the day. Anyway, and we got down to Nebraska, and it got windy. Stupidly windy. All right. Oh my goodness. It's asking for a passcode. Here it comes. So because it was so windy, we were going kind of slow, a little slower than we normally would be, because we're getting buffeted constantly. It was kind of difficult. But anyway, so we got towards Kearney, Nebraska, and then it got. Then I happened to look at the forecast, and it says where we're going is going to be severe thunderstorm, hail, and maybe tornadoes. And then farther, when we're going to be in Iowa later in the day, same thing. We're like, oh, right. Yep, I see you there, Toto. So just a second. I'm like, this is bad news. So we need to head north. So we drive north to get up north of the storms coming in. So we go to South Dakota then. And we had to, yeah? What? Oh, I already did. Yeah, thank you. My other kids bringing donkey in. So we're going as fast as we can. We're pulling a trailer to get north of this storm, and we stop at a gas station, and it starts raining. It starts getting more windy. We're like, get going. We get back in the car, and we pull ahead of it. We stop to go to the bathroom. Starts raining. We slow down 5 miles an hour. Starts raining. Like, we got to go faster. finally, we're like, we're north of, if you know Minnesota, across the south side of Minnesota, Highway 90 goes across there. We're getting chased by the storm, all the lightning behind us. And we hook north a little bit towards Mankato on Minnesota 60, and then we finally get past it. Anyway, took forever. We got home at 9 a.m. So anyway, I have here Toto. Is that good to call you Toto? Oh, hold on a second. I don't hear you. I don't have the audio. I have to, when I go on the road, I'm partially modify I bring stuff with me. So this is let's see, where's Zoom? There it is. Zoom is there. All right, say something. Say it again. Oh, that's on you, I think. I don't see your microphone popping up and down when you talk. Say something again. Yeah, nothing. All right. Can you try? Now. Oh, there we go.
Good. It auto switched to the camera microphone instead of my headset. I don't know why. Whatever. It's trying to be smart.
All right. Well, good. Glad we fixed that. Anyway, this is Toto. Toto and I have been talking on Discord a little bit about aviation, and I'll just let him explain it a little bit, and
sure.
about what he's done, his expertise.
So, I mean, you introduced me in a very nice manner. You're giving me way too much credit for that. I don't work on real aircraft. I work on flight simulators. But, physics at the end of the day, it works the same in both. So once you've written the code for a flight simulator and you just feed it simulated inputs, it still works out the exact same manner pretty much. And yeah, there are many I have there's this almost nothing in aircraft that would make sense on a flat Earth. But one thing that for sure would not work is the way that aircraft determine their spatial attitude. And it has to do with, FLIRFs will often talk about, like, they'll misunderstand everything about how aircraft avionics work in general, how the instrumentation works in general. But we can get into basically however much you want to put your audience to sleep. I can explain exactly how aircraft determine their spatial attitude and how they determine, crucially, their heading, which absolutely cannot be done on a flat Earth. Or we can get into, like, how aircraft would fly in the southern hemisphere. They really couldn't. Or how airplane ranges is a problem, airspeeds is a problem, all manner of indications. So you just, whichever one you want to take it.
I think the one that you were mentioning, how they determine their latitude, is very interesting.
Absolutely. So on board of an aircraft, hopefully screen sharing will work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hold on. I have to.
Sure.
It's blocked by default.
Sure. I want to get into, like,
there you go.
We want to go into fingers crossed it didn't implode now. Okay, cool. Where is that thing? There it is. Share. So, right. So, aircraft inertial reference systems. Very interesting stuff. I know, totally riveting. So this is the box essentially that tells an aircraft where it is on the planet, and it does this by essentially by completely self-contained means, meaning it doesn't receive any external inputs. The thing basically is a closed-off box. And if let's see. Oh, there we go. There's some shots of the internals there. This is the sort of the core of how the thing works. You've heard about ring laser gyros before, the Sagnac effect. I know FLIRFs have some twisted explanations of that.
They say it's measuring the sky rotating, even though it's inside a box that can't see the sky.
Right. And the funny thing is that these systems have worked before the Sanya have been working before ring laser gyros. So there is another type of inertial reference system. So this is a modern type, right? This is what's called a strap-down system, meaning both the gyros and the accelerometers. This is what the accelerometers look like. And you can get data sheets, and you know, we can go ahead and absolutely bore the ever-loving everything out of people. But these systems have been not just built in this kind of a strap-down manner. These systems hail back to the 60s, to actually the Apollo age. And they have been running with mechanical gyros and mechanical platforms before. So either the flirts are claiming that gyros themselves measure, did it precess like to the sky or something? I don't know, really. It's kind of a weird argument.
Yeah. They think
But
some of them have even claimed that the ether doesn't just affect optical gyroscopes, but that they say the ether affects mechanical gyroscopes.
well, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
In any case, I can show you pretty much. Well, I've got my tablet here open, so I'm gonna just go ahead and probably scribbling is the easiest way to show it, because you know, if you get into like this is like the way that the avionics internally works, it's just a whole truckload of math, and it gets very overwhelming. It gets very, very strange
Yeah.
for well, not followable really by most mere mortals, including mostly myself. So I'm going to try and explain that the way that these things work. As soon as I can find Zoom to switch windows again. Where the hell did that window go? Um, okay. Oh, right, I know. It's gone to the top of the screen here. So let's go ahead and share. Where's GIMP? There it is. Let's see. Hopefully this works. Good stuff. So the way these things basically work is internally what they'll do is they'll establish a kind of virtual motion stationary or motion platform, not stationary platform, it's really a motion platform that is referenced to your local coordinate axes. So they'll basically compute a kind of solution to where they can figure out to where each of the three axes of the accelerometers are level with local ground, right? So this is basically like, this is your horizontal in one axis, this is the horizontal in the other axis, and this is your vertical. And they'll try and align these extremely closely. They have to be very, very tight. Typically, operational performance requirements are to within 0.01 degrees. That is, you know, that is a measure, a level of precision to where the aircraft being buffeted by the wind is easily perceptible to the system and will actually upset it. So there's a whole bunch of both mathematical and algorithmic solutions to try and correct for the aircraft buffet. But what they'll do is they'll align their motion platform to the local level point. And they do that basically by sensing the gravity vector and then figuring out the way that the aircraft is misaligned, either tilted, you know, in pitch or in roll ever so slightly, and they'll adjust the number until basically they just can't see the gravitational vector without seeing any horizontal movement. With me so far?
Yep.
So,
And
and then
people are,
it's
by the way, people are saying that looks like Linux and it looks like GIMP. Is that right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes, it is.
yes, you've got the nerd cred going there. So well done.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so what they'll do, this is by the way done during pre-flight. So while the aircraft's basically sitting on the ground, you turn the battery on, and these systems basically start what they call an alignment process. So they know that the aircraft's stationary, it's not moving, and so they'll try and figure out, first of all, level the platform. And once they've done that to a sufficient degree, then what happens is basically that the gyros that are on board, that are measuring essentially the rotation rates of everything, they are extremely sensitive to the point that they can trivially sense the rotation of the Earth, the usual 15 degrees per hour. The funny thing is that essentially, if you monitor these gyros and you observe the rates around them, you can both determine your latitude as well as your azimuth angle, basically your heading. And the way to do that, conceptually, I'm going to try and simplify this so that we don't get into math because it gets really, really boring. But imagine that an aircraft, let's imagine that this is our line of latitude, this is a line of longitude, and our aircraft is sitting pointed. Oh, my drawing skills are horrible right now, but our aircraft is pointing about that away, right? So we would expect that this would be 0 degrees heading, this would be about 45, 90, and so on, right? And we need to determine this to a very high degree of precision because we need to be able to rely on this heading. This is the only heading that the aircraft actually presents to the pilots on their primary flight displays. Some flirts, I know that they think that there's a magnetic sensing, or sometimes called a flux gate, or a magnetometer. Airliners do not use magnetometers. They have not been using those since about the 80s. Reason being, polar flight is a little bit difficult when you fly in an area with so much weird magnetic misalignment that it just gets completely useless.
Yeah.
So what instead we do is we measure, since we've basically aligned our platform axes with this kind of local level, we then if our lateral gyro measures some amount and our longitudinal gyro measures some amount, and then even our vertical gyro measures some amount, you can actually correlate that, and you can figure out this amount of tilt. And it's a few sine and cosine rules basically that you have to take into account. And these systems they have to be able, and in fact they are able, to determine heading to within approximately 0.1 degrees of operational performance. Now, once the alignment is complete, these systems are then able to maintain the performance to they completely become, essentially at that point, they become decoupled from any kind of external inputs, right? They basically go into sort of free mode. And once you've given them a starting position, now all they need to really, that starting position is just so they can start integrating your motion through space. They're able to maintain operational performance to within about 2 nautical miles of drift per hour. That's basically what the manufacturer will tell you. In actual flight, they usually perform much better than that. But this is what we basically rely on in terms of operational performance. So you can actually see that even in their own documentation here, is if you take it down like this is sort of a product brochure, but it does tell you a fair bit of information, all about the programming inputs, programming outputs that come out of the thing. They use a weird aviation standard called Airing 429. Anybody in the chat who's into aircraft is probably right now kind of like just jumping up and down and raising their hand saying, "I know this, I know this." This is the type of data that they send out, and crucially, the manufacturer will actually tell you the performance parameters. Now, this is again part of certification aircraft. The reason why they're so freaking expensive is not just because they're complicated to build, but also somebody's got to put their name to this because there's a whole lot riding on them. So
that's a lot of liability.
Yes. So they will, the manufacturer here of this specific inertial reference unit guarantees that with 95% confidence level, so that's basically 2 sigma, you are going to experience an accuracy drift of 2 nautical miles per hour since alignment times of less than 10 hours. So since you finish the alignment, and you start moving, you start taxiing and rolling and doing whatever, that's basically when the alignment stops. And for the next 10 hours, the thing will drift at most 2 nautical miles per hour with 95% confidence level. Then between 10 to 18 hours, they basically guarantee that the accuracy should be within 20 miles of your true position in space with 95% confidence level.
And
Now, the reason for the
this is using rotation and accelerometers. That's
yes,
it.
exactly. It's an inertial system. It's completely decoupled from the outside world.
So, and how does it know? I mean, it can know its latitude based on the rotation, but how does it know the
Yes.
longitude?
You at the start of the flight, when you're sitting down on the ground, you basically go into the flight management computer and basically just tell it either this is my starting position. Some of the newer units these days automatically pick up the starting position from the if there's an external positional source, something like a GPS unit, they will automatically grab that
Okay.
and lock that in. But once you start moving, they decouple from the outside world because this is part of essentially the safety profile of the position keeping system. Because
Yeah.
if you start, if you, there's been actually a lot of troubles these days that have been happening in the Middle East and around Eastern Europe, having to do with what's called GPS spoofing. So there's a lot of bad actors in there in the area.
Ah,
Yes, and
I see.
they have been giving us a whole lot of trouble. And it's escalated during the past about 2 years, very, very severely, to the point where if you were just looking at an aircraft track just from GPS data, you get to about southern Turkey, also around the area of Cyprus, definitely around the Middle East in general, from Israel roughly out of Iran, you're going to have aircraft jumping all over the place, so to speak. And there have been severe safety reports of aircraft navigation systems getting completely confused, the ones that are relying essentially just purely on GPS
Yeah.
position, because they are being spoofed to just basically either move to a completely bogus location or inject a huge positional error. And airlines and operators have developed operational procedures these days for these areas to where they're going to tell you, hey, if you suspect GPS spoofing, just turn off the GPS unit and you're just going to go back to pure inertial position keeping. But there's some other augmentations you can do with like radio signals from the ground. But in general, you're going to have to fall back to your inertial reference units. And there's not just one on board an aircraft. The typically they're going to have at least two. Many aircraft have three on board just to have additional redundancies and the ability to basically figure out if there's one of them that's faulty. You want to know, you basically go by quorum, right? The one
Yeah,
that gives
you want an
the
odd
two that
number.
agree. Yes. The two that agree are typically the ones that are going to be
Yeah.
okay.
And the 737 that
Y-
issue they had two
yes.
things. And one went
So
bad and you got to pick which one you're going to trust and which you're not.
right. And so for those for the final sort of fallback, there's usually a standby instrument on board in the main instrument panel in between the two pilots. It's a fairly small thing. And standby instruments usually have their own miniature heading or attitude reference system inside of it. It's usually a much lower complexity gyro in there. It could be usually the systems will not be pulling they're not going to be putting a ring laser gyro in there. It's just way too expensive. Like these units, each of these boxes here, easily 50 grand a pop for a used
Wow.
one.
And so
And
to just to it knows when the flight begins, it can figure out its latitude and you tell it its longitude.
yes,
And then after that point, just based on its rotation and
yes,
its accelerometers, it
yes,
knows where it is on the surface of the Earth.
yes. And we need to correct for Coriolis, and we need to correct a whole bunch of factors. In fact, if we didn't, Within about 10 minutes of flight, the position would be so far out of whack, it'd be completely unusable. We traverse. So whenever you have flurfs talking about why doesn't the aircraft pitch its nose down when it's flying, it actually does. We know that it does because our instruments can sense for it. It just has to correct for the continuous nose down pitch. But if you were looking at the actual sensor outputs in inertial space, yes, the aircraft very much does pitch nose down slowly over time. Now it's at a rate that is completely humanly imperceptible. Like it's like trying to sense the movement of the hour hand on a clock. You're not going to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, yourself.
Uh,
But
yes,
but
but
precision
instruments
instruments
can.
can. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Now,
exactly. And so
could you address the 95% confidence? We got PJ CNET who
mhm.
says that means it's wrong 1 out of 20.
It's
That's not what
it's
that
not
means.
sort of. It has to do with what's called a normal Gaussian distribution, right? So the system is designed, it's more like for, how do I explain this? It's the 2 sigma confidence value. If you did a 10,000 flights, let's say, um, if you did 10,000 flights theoretically at the performance limit of the system, which is basically the sort of worst case where the airplane's being jostled about on the ground while the system is aligning, and it's got somewhat worn out and old components inside, and it's basically in the most adverse conditions, the unit itself. They say that within 10,000 flights, 5% of those are going to have accuracy levels that fall outside of this 2 nautical miles per hour drift rate. And that is what Honeywell will undersign. It's mostly a matter of risk analysis. Like their risk model predicts this number. Um, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that the actual avionics isn't better than this. It actually is by quite a bit, by about a factor of 4 to 5. They'll drift less than that. But this is what they'll undersign.
Yeah, that's what they'll guarantee. They'll
Yes.
Yeah.
And just because it's more than 2 nautical miles per hour does not mean it's 10 million. So it's a normal distribution, right? So this is a 2 sigma value. So what is your chances of being within 3 nautical miles per hour? It's 99%. Within 4 nautical miles per hour, it's like 99.9%.
Yeah.
So it's a logarithmic scale that just goes up in confidence. And everything in aviation, whenever you're dealing with any kind of system, you always have to be able to quantify the risk factor. It's all well and good to be able to build a system, but if you can't put an assurance that it's going to perform to that level, you're not going to get certified for transport use.
Yeah, human
So
lives are at stake.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So um, there are it's one of the reasons, for example, why aircraft designs take such a long time to stabilize or basically get them out, right? Designing an aircraft, just if you go to, from CAD design to something that could be flown inside of a wind tunnel, takes half a year. It's honestly not that hard. The problem is figuring out all the fine details and quantifying and having all the meetings and the design reviews and all that kind of stuff before you actually put metal to the mill, right? Before you actually put metal in the air, you have to have done thousands upon thousands of hours of design reviews, meetings, white papers, and risk analysis of all manner of systems. Like even the fact that you have, for example, the Honeywell here will guarantee for you um, a reliability factor of 40,000 hours between mean time between failure of the system. That means that in order to, let's say, your civil aviation certification authority requires that the primary attitude keeping system on board the aircraft experience a total failure of no less than 1 in 1 million flight hours. So with this number, then you can calculate how many inertial reference systems do I need to actually install.
Mm.
Or if I need to, for example, if the number says 3, or if the risk analysis says 3, and I don't want to pay for 3, I got to figure out some sort of a mitigating factor. So for instance, I might say, okay, I'm going to install two, and I'm going to put in a backup system that is much lower complexity, much lower reliability, but I accept, but it's going to get me to my reliability rating at the cost of certain operational considerations. Like for instance, um, aircraft frequently, many people in the flying public don't know this, but when you fly aboard an aircraft, doesn't mean that everything on board is actually serviceable. Um, Chances are, I'd say it's like a unicorn to find an aircraft without a broken part. They are designed to fly with bits that are non-functional, and the manufacturer builds redundancies into the systems. So they'll have, for example, when we have 3 inertial reference systems on board, we might be certified. Each aircraft will come with what's called a minimum equipment list, an MEL, and it's a big book that's usually kept these days on an iPad, but back in the days it used to be a physical manual inside of the aircraft. And that book will specify for every part of the aircraft that can be what can be broken, how it can be broken, what are the redundancies, are there any operational or maintenance impacts, and how quickly do you need to fix it. So for instance, triple redundant inertial reference systems, the MEL might say, but you are allowed to fly with just 2, provided that you have your standby instrument is functional, and let's say that one of the battery buses or whatever is functional so that you don't have like a cross electrical fault. They've done the entire risk analysis for that kind of particular failure. And then it'll give you things like you need to tag a breaker, pull a breaker, tag it. You need to tag something on the main instrument panel. And then let's say you got to fix it within a week or something like that, once it's been discovered and logged. So all of these things are the operational procedures in aviation. I like to say that aviation is the most heavily regulated industry out there, except for nuclear power. That's about the one that is probably more heavily regulated,
Yeah.
but that's it. So and by the way, one thing that's kind of funny about inertial reference alignment. So let's say in a kind of, am I showing? Oh, I'm not. Let me switch back to GIMP so everybody can, again, enjoy my drawing skills. Yeah, they're going to get a good chuckle out of this. So essentially, let me see if I can draw something in kind of sort of 3D. Uh, let's imagine that we are sort of here on like a spherical surface. And here's the aircraft, right? So we're pointing, I don't know, like about in that kind of a direction. When we do an alignment, what we're doing really is we're sensing the principal axis of rotation of the Earth, right? So we're basically sensing this axis. And then we're measuring how much misaligned it is from the north. What you'll notice is as we get further up into the higher and higher latitudes, the sort of lateral projection of this axis becomes smaller and smaller, right? So at the equator, it is trivial to determine your basically the entire the entire rotational component of the Earth is pretty much aligned with the ground. With me so far?
Yep.
But what happens up at the pole? You are basically at that point, when you're up at the pole, so here's the aircraft sitting on the ground. You've got the Earth underneath you, and you're sitting right at the North Pole or South Pole. It doesn't matter which one, both work the same way. And all that's happening is you're basically spinning around the principal axis of rotation of the Earth. So what is your heading? How can you tell this with gyros? And the short answer is you can't. So, so you'd think then, therefore, that obviously this would kind of affect the ability of these systems to align, right?
Yeah.
In effect, it very much does. And the manufacturer also, again, tells you about this. So they'll tell you, this is coasting for approach. And let's see, do I have the table for alignment here? Might be in another manual. Stand by. Give me a sec. I'm gonna pull out another manual in my out of my book of tricks. I gotta go to an aircraft manual because that's where the manufacturer of the aircraft actually gives you the number. But short, I'm trying. But the there we go. And let me make this a little bit smaller so it comes through a little bit better on the stream.
You still see the previous one.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm just about to switch here. As soon as I find the window, why doesn't it? It doesn't sort windows by recency for some reason.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. Wait a minute. It's not even finding the window here. Nope, 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 nope. Layout and options. No, I don't want the Airbus A350. Ah, there we go. Found it. Alrighty. New manual. And they'll give you the time to align. So the inertial reference system is another name for the inertial reference unit. And they actually tell you at your given latitude how much time the unit will take typically to complete its alignment. So it's basically just looking to refine the alignment for a certain amount of time. And as you get closer and closer to the poles, you'll notice that the alignment time balloons.
Yeah.
So down at the equator, it'll be done in about 5 minutes. Up, near Svalbard, which is one of the more northernmost airports out there for really accessible to anybody, is about 17 minutes. And usually these systems will basically just either completely refuse to align much above about 80 degrees latitude, or they'll take so long that it'll be completely unusable. So the thing will basically just sit there and just twiddle its thumbs trying to figure out, okay, how do I actually work with this guy? Because they're pointing me I don't know where. So that's even the actual like the manufacturer is going to tell you that just by pure geometry you can figure out that these things wouldn't work on a flat Earth because the flat Earth is essentially latitude 90 where you would be the gyros wouldn't either detect nothing or they would detect you just turning around on your head like a spinning
Well,
top.
flat earthers typically say that the Earth does not move at all, so it would measure nothing.
Or yeah, it would measure nothing, so therefore it would never work. And yet these things work on a day-to-day basis. There are entire volumes written about how to treat with this system. So it'll say, for example, here in the manual, during IRS initialization on the ground, the IRS aligning do not taxi message appears on the primary flight displays. And let's see yeah, there we go. They even have a shot of this. So that's how it looks on the instrumentation. That tells you, look, please don't tow me, please don't move me, because I'm working on
Oh,
something. And there are other conditions. The system is actually kind of sensitive to wind buffet. So you can end up with a case where if the airplane is being buffeted very heavily by like there's either a lot of wind. I've even had one of our consultant pilots say that even running up the air stair system too fast will actually sometimes get the thing to reset its alignment and restart.
it starts over.
Yes, it's a little bit annoying.
Huh.
That's why they usually try and do that before anybody tries to board the airplane. Um, and yeah, if it does that, it basically the recommendation is to tow the airplane either into a hangar or somewhere where it's like hidden from direct wind, so it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
get buffeted about too hard. So that's the way this works. So anyway, we can talk about other stuff besides avionics. Like this
I
is somewhat.
all right. I had an idea that this was how it worked, but I didn't. It was just some conjecture I put together. But to be able to determine where you are based on rotation and acceleration, that's just amazing.
And it does that thousands of times. Every airliner does this before a flight.
Yeah.
In fact, um, there's a reason why frequently, let me bring up a browser here.
But just a second. So hold on. All right. Alignment. IRS requires an initialization process that establishes a relationship. Somebody's talking about the GPS here. So this valid input of initial latitude and longitude is
Yes.
necessary. So why do you input the latitude?
So the latitude determination algorithm is usually not precise enough to give you navigational performance. The system is able to determine your latitude to within plus or minus a couple of degrees, but if
Okay.
the airplane's being buffeted very heavily, it might not be able to get you, close enough. Thank you. And in order to get navigational performance, basically to within a few miles of your actual true position, the system would require an excessively long amount of alignment time. Like it would have to sit there for a day.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, so this is from let's see, Metal Jacket. It says if you look at the above, it says it aligns using GPS position. If GPS isn't available, manual position has to be entered.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah. So and then maybe Metal Jacket wasn't here. What happens after it establishes this position?
So it basically sits in this alignment mode where it tries to null out the lateral drift rates for essentially until the airplane starts to move. And the way it senses it's starting to move, it senses an acceleration. Either you're being pushed back from the gate, or you've started taxiing forward, or you've started turning significantly. That's how it knows, okay, they're done aligning, they're starting to move. So at that point, it exits the alignment mode. And in fact, it does the alignment sort of on the background. Once it gets past about this few minutes, it will enter what's called a navigation mode. So it says, I've got enough for navigational performance. So I'm going to start giving you your inertial position, your heading, and your inertial attitude. But as long as I'm sitting on the ground, I might as well, and not move. I'm going to try and refine it even better.
Mm,
Once it starts moving, it decouples. It stops considering you being stationary, and it stops the alignment process. And at that point, the platform is, so to speak, you can say free floating, but really it's inertially locked in inertial space. So as the Earth is rotating, you are basically the platform, so to speak, detects this drift, and in software it is corrected, basically using a mathematical transformation to construct a virtual fixed platform. But that's how it does that. The amount of drift on these gyros has to be very, 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 very low in order to achieve this level of precision. So I do have the data brochure, for example. So once the alignment basically completes, the gyros then have to be completely relied upon to avoid having excessive drift. So these are the gyros. Um, and you can see here, this is the amount of angular random walk. So if you just sat the gyro in inertial space and you kept it basically completely non-rotating, this is the typical expected drift rate of the system operating. So 0.0035 degrees per, and this root hour, do you know what that is?
um, I think I do, but
Yeah, it's a square root of
yeah,
the hour.
yeah, yeah.
And the funny thing is this
Is it
tells you that
RMS, right?
not quite. This
No.
is this has to do with statistical distributions, and this is what tells any statistician that looks at this immediately knows, okay, that's a normal distribution, right? So the noise coming from the gyro, like every real analog system, has a little bit of noise,
Yeah.
right, to it. It's a real thing. And what this tells you that is that the noise distribution, if you graphed it out, it would actually look like a Gaussian distribution. And if you sum up random distributions or random measurements with a Gaussian distribution, you'll actually find that it has a walk rate that is dependent upon the square root of time passed, or the number basically of iterations that you've done.
Okay.
Because there's a chance when you're summing up basically the values, there's a chance that you might walk away from the value, but also some chance that you might walk back to the true value. And so the actual relationship ends up being based upon the square root of the amount of time passed. And of course, if you want to, get into the real nitty-gritty, they'll tell you all manner of detail. I have a different manual
So, all
up
right.
that
Well,
tells you how to interact with
P-
the thing.
PhD Tony is asking, can you
Mhm.
ask what the sampling rate on the inertial sensor is?
They actually on the inertial sensor, you are allowed to sample at different rates. It's a matter of configuration. Let me bring up. Do I have the manual handy for? Let me stand by. It is able to sample, I think, up to like 20,000 hertz, just quickly from memory. For that, I have to bring up another very strange manual. We're getting in deep here, folks, so brace for impact.
I think this crowd here is ready for it.
Okay, they're all ready and
All of
waiting for
them.
good stuff because we're going in deep, folks. Um, Now we're gonna be looking at the actual
Oh,
interface
geez.
manual for the gyro.
Engineering documents. Look
Yes,
at
sir.
that.
So you've got a user sample request, sample rate request, and maximum guaranteed sample data clock rate. Hang on, nope. We are able to sample. It gives you even like the actual timing of signals that you need to interact with the thing. And they do tell you what the maximum and minimum sampling rate is. Sampling rate. Man, where were you? I haven't had to dive into this detail in a while. It's something on the order of a few kilohertz. Stand by. Input rate. And by the way, the system is able to detect rotations extremely tightly. And these Honeywell gyros can go up to, so it can easily detect, the rotation rate of the Earth, which is something like 0.0035 degrees per hour or something like, I'm sorry, per second.
Yeah, well,
Um,
everybody knows it's a 15-degree-per-hour drift.
yes, just divide one by the other. But it crucially can also detect up to 900 degrees per second. So like 3 RPM.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no, 3 revolutions per second.
That's yes. That's more than 3 RPM.
Yes, it's
That's
3
a
revolutions.
few.
It's a fair few, 180. But it's the amount and by the way, imagine doing that in an aircraft.
Yeah, that'd be a bit much for the airplane.
Um, there we go. Here, I was just looking at the wrong manual here. I'm actually gonna take you back towards the simplified manual here. It actually tells you, PhD Tony, your sampling frequency typically is 2 kilohertz. You are able to request up to 5 kilohertz
There you go.
sampling rate from the unit. And they'll give you, there is actually an intrinsic noise plot, which they give you. Yeah, they'll give you like the Allen variance and intrinsic noise maps given the sampling rate. So the faster you sample, basically, the more noise you get out of the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that it is up to you to smooth that out. Um, and yeah, they give you a whole bunch of like this is more of a quick product brochure. The other one is literally a user manual or programming manual. So yeah, this thing is extremely sensitive. It's able to easily detect the rotation rate of the Earth.
All right, another question from. Oh, I highlighted it and it scrolled off. And unhighlighted. Stringers one says, does the IRS function as a gyro compass?
Yes, it can. So this process of determining which way you're heading on the ground is called gyro compassing. And yes, once it is locked in, it functions effectively as a gyro compass, with the fact that since it knows your position and it tracks your position over the Earth, it's actually able to correct Coriolis and drift. Because if you were, let's say, flying along a line of latitude, then the actual inertial space is rotating around you, even though you're flying the same heading. So it needs to correct for that. If it didn't, it's one of the bad, like I hated on my classic mechanical gyros that you have on like a little Cessna, like a six-pack. Those stupid things are also essentially a gyro compass, but they are not actually aware of your position, so they cannot correct for that. It's just a spinning compass with a compass placard and a little mechanical transmission. So they will actually drift at about 15 degrees per hour, which is really annoying. That means you need to continuously. There's a little knob on the thing.
You
You
have to,
pull on it,
yeah, you
and you
cage
correct
them,
for it.
right? Is it called
Yeah.
caging?
Caging has to do with the attitude gyro. I'm talking about the directional gyros.
Okay,
Called it
okay.
DG. And on those aircraft, you have to have a separate wet compass, or sometimes called a whiskey compass, which is a conventional magnetic compass somewhere in the aircraft, which you look at and then read off the number, and you correct your directional gyro back to it. But yeah, the inertial reference systems are not magnetic at all. In fact, they do the reverse, because they're actually always in true reference internally, so true headings only, and they will compute they'll compute a synthetic magnetic heading for you. Just because of the fact, for various complicated historical reasons, aviation is still primarily a magnetic heading referenced system, but they'll give you the way that it does that is by using an internal magnetic variation database that's loaded in the software in the unit. So
So
it will
the
try.
declination database is in
Yes,
it.
sir.
Yeah.
And it is valid in this unit specifically until 2030, with software updates provided at your request
Oh my
and
gosh.
cost.
So when it loads it in, does it load in the predictions for future years then?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Oh,
there
that's crazy.
is. Yeah, so the way we do this in software is NOAA actually publish a mathematical model,
Yeah.
which is publicly available. You're free to use that, or you can write your own, I guess. But they publish both the models in software as ready to go C code. You can just include that in your code base public domain. And they also publish every 5 years for the next 5 years a magnetic declination coefficient table. It's
Yeah.
not a database, so it's not
Hmm.
pre-computed. Rather, it's a series of, I don't know, like 12th order polynomials that if you give them your latitude, longitude, altitude, and time in fractional years, it will spit out the magnetic variation at your location to within, certain levels of precision that you want.
Yeah.
It's much more yeah,
And
it's much more accurate at lower latitudes, but yeah.
yeah. So I know that they typically had done 10-year updates, and then in 2015 they did a out of band update.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I had to load that into the airplane. That was fun. We had to issue a partial update because NOAA figured out that, but it was supposed to be by 2020 was the next model when the next model is supposed to be published, and they figured out that apparently in some corner case it would have given insufficiently precise answers, so they had to do a midlife update.
Yeah. And that's because the magnetic fields were moving faster than they had
Yes, the dipole.
historically. Yeah.
Yeah, the dipole moment of the Earth was a little bit unstable, less stable than they predicted. Obviously, this is a prediction, right? So that's one of the things is when you look at the performance characteristics that Honeywell give you here for the inertial reference unit, for true heading, they guarantee an accuracy of 0.4 degrees 2 sigma, but for magnetic, 2 degrees, not 0.4.
Oh,
Just because of the fact that they can't put enough of a
declination.
guarantee.
Yeah.
Yes, and you'll notice that it actually varies based upon your latitude. So between 50 north and 50 south, 2 degrees. Between 50 north and 68 north, 3 degrees. Between 50 south and 60
Oh,
south, 3. And outside of that, in all
4.
other regions where magnetic heading is valid, 4 degrees. but usually the system will actually dump out of magnetic mode up above about 80 degrees latitude. When you get into polar navigation, the system will just go ahead and revert to true headings. It'll flash a little message at you and tell, hey dude, we're now in true heading reference, because like I can't be giving you a heading that's going to be pointing magnetically, you're flying towards north, but it shows a
Yeah.
reversed magnetic
Yeah,
compass that rose at you.
the North Pole, the North Magnetic Pole might be behind you, and you still have the
Yes.
true North Pole ahead of you. Yeah.
And it's one of the
Um,
reasons why we went to these inertial reference systems. In fact, even Concorde had them, and some of the first 747s already had them.
hmm,
Those are using the mechanical ones, just because of the fact that if you wanted to do polar navigation, you can't do that with a magnetic. In conventional airliners, before we use inertial reference systems, we use mechanical gyros that we say were slaved or sourced from a magnetic flux gate, so that you don't have to continuously adjust the thing. But if you were flying in polar regions, which the 747s quite frequently did, and the manufacturer wanted to be able to put them there, it would just not, the thing wouldn't work, right? If you were just using a flux gate, it would just start pointing in all manner of directions. So to that end, above a certain latitude, we basically just dispense with magnetic headings because it just becomes unworkable.
hmm.
Canada is actually one of the ones that are trying to push for all aviation to switch over to true heading references everywhere. Um, Shipping has already done it. Aviation is kind of dragging its feet for the very simple reason that it allows manufacturers for smaller aircraft to get away with much, much cheaper systems. Like these ring laser gyros are freaking expensive, right? So the inertial
Yeah.
reference system, an inertial reference system of aviation grade quality, first of all, is very, very expensive, and second of all, is a bit of an export concern. Um, Many of these systems will actually, little anecdote, I talked to some people that are test pilots on the Bombardier um, Global, and one of the things is that that jet is fast. Like the business people want to go fast. They've certified that thing to like Mach 0.935 or something, like very, very close to the speed of sound. So
The
during
IRS, the INS.
the aircraft itself,
Oh, okay.
and so business people want to go fast, and because for them, business
Time,
jets are
time
time
is money.
machines.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the problems, so therefore, when they were certifying the aircraft, they had to actually take it supersonic. They had to go a little bit beyond, when you certify something to a limit, you got to go and demonstrate it a little bit beyond that, make sure it doesn't fall apart.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the problems that they apparently kept running into is that the inertial reference system would dump out the position solution and would dump out attitude once you get above a certain threshold ground speed, something like 600 or 650 knots or something. When the system started to think that you were about to go supersonic, or you were just about going supersonic, the system would dump out your position it's actually a software trick or bug intentionally built into the system to avoid export controls, because one of the things that an inertial reference system is very, very useful for is ballistic missiles
Yeah. I can
and
see that. Yeah.
all manner of missile technology. So Honeywell, in order to be able to sell into the civilian market, has to put in speed limits in software.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yes,
That's
GPS units are the same, by the way. They'll
yeah.
stop giving a position above a certain speed.
I knew that. Okay, I'm gonna have to remember. There's a question from Icy Spin, but I remember that before around 2000, GPS was not it was
Yes,
accurate to within several meters, not
several
feet.
hundred, about 100 meters. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you had a unit that was just stationary on the ground, then over time it would
Yes.
determine its position. So I knew somebody that worked for.
Mhm.
It was a company that did agriculture things, and so they
Yeah.
would put these GPS receivers on a farm, and
Right.
then they'd get their true position, and then they would, I think, triangulate the
Yes. If you,
tractors to get their positions.
yeah, if you average enough data points, eventually the thing is designed so that it basically oscillates around your median position.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any intrinsic bias in the imprecision algorithm, in the original one anyway. After about, I think 1998, I think, is when Bill Clinton issued an executive order which basically disabled this selective availability system.
But they
And
can turn it back on
yes,
for
they can.
certain regions if they want.
Yes, in fact, GPS has multiple signals in it. They transmit the original P signal. So the P signal is the precision position signal, and that's the one that's currently in use. That's the one that gives you precision to within a couple of meters.
Yeah.
Um, the There was a lower quality positioning signal made available in before 1998. That one intentionally had a little bit of error introduced into it to make sure that it wasn't usable for basically adversaries of the United States. But since then, GPS has developed a few other signal bands that give either greater precision or some other reliability advantages. Like GPS is a little bit sensitive to what's called multipathing error,
Yeah.
where if the UHF signal basically travels through multiple paths to you because of atmospheric refraction, um,
Or it
you
could
can end,
bounce off the ground or off a building or
or
something.
that
But yeah, you get
ionospheric distortion. That's
you get two
all manner of weird.
copies. You get two copies of the same signal essentially.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can end up with some positional error. So the military actually has their own encrypted signal, which they are not going to give anybody else access to, so that they can actually selectively disable GPS within a region, but keep it for themselves.
Yeah. I know their password. Yeah.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's the last 20 digits of pi.
Ah,
Yeah.
damn, that's going to take a while to figure out.
Yeah.
Hope we've got an eternity.
Okay, so Icy Spin was asking why that root that of time. Why is it root of time instead of just time?
It has to do with, yeah, it has to do with the fact that the error basically accumulates. So one of the things is these gyros, a conventional gyro essentially stays, let me turn off screen sharing. Yeah, there we go. So you can see me again, I guess. Or no, hang on. How do I disable the thing?
Disable it. I don't know where it is on Linux.
Well, it's at the top of my
Yeah, it
screen
should be at the
here.
top.
It says new share, pause share.
I can stop.
Okay, cool.
There you go.
Cool. Right, so I can actually like use my hands and stuff. So what was I talking about? Right. Conventional gyros. A conventional gyro is essentially a fixed motion platform. And you basically, the system will observe the rate of gyro drift, and it's literally a mechanical gyro suspended in like magnetic bearings. On these ring laser gyros, they are actually rate gyros. So they don't measure an angle, they measure a rate of angle change. So it's the first derivative. And therefore, that means basically you're summing up, you're adding in changes of rotation rate over time. And if that distribution of the signal, of the noise, is Gaussian, and you sum up enough changes, then basically the random your random behavior of the sum is dependent upon the square root of time that you have done this summation for. Because chances are, if you, let's say this is the true number, the true value of your attitude, and you sum up changes, you don't just drift away. Sometimes you drift back towards it. And the rate of drift actually, if you graph it out, it looks like it sort of spreads out like a like a mm, like if what's the shape I'm thinking about? Yeah,
Parabola? Or do you mean
yeah, parabola, exactly,
yeah.
right. So it goes fastest at the start, and then it sort of slowly levels off. And if you graph it out, the relationship is roughly
So,
as
so for a lot of people might not know what you mean when you say Gaussian distribution.
right, normal distribution. Yeah, that um, for that.
So I have a let me have a shot at it. All measurements have errors, and there's going to be a little bit of slop in meat space, and nothing is perfect in meat space. So when you do
Yes.
these measurements, you get a slight distribution, even if it's the same thing you're measuring. It's just sitting there doing nothing but measuring whatever. It's gonna slide around, and when you plot the distribution of that where it's at, you're gonna get this big bell curve thing. That's a Gaussian distribution of error, sometimes it's called. So
Yes, and I'm just looking for the window where I had this open. Oh, there it is. So that is a Gaussian or normal
yeah, there you
distribution.
go.
So it can be centered on something other than the mean. It can be wider or narrower, but it's this shape basically. This
Yeah,
typically shape is what we're talking about. And so that's what the noise behavior of a
and
ring laser gyro will be.
and it's got the sigma on screen there for
Yes.
PJCnet. So the sigma, a good sigma has a more narrow peak to it, like that top one there.
Yes.
Where that what's that lower one that's the bottom? What color is that? Green?
Green, yeah.
Yeah, that green one has a rather wide distribution, a not good sigma.
Yes. It's called, yeah, that's the standard deviation. That's
Yeah,
basically how far you have to go before a certain portion of the curve is under that value. And a typical sort of way to remember this, there's like it's not like a sigma of one. If you go double, then it's basically like everything is inside. It's sort of a tailing off of the amount that is covered by that curve. So within the first sigma, within the first standard distribution, about 2/3 of the probability space is covered within that one sigma. Twice sigma will be 95%. 3 times sigma will be about 99%, and so on and so forth. And that's why frequently in scientific discoveries, when you hear we have to know this thing or we have to have confidence of 5 sigma before we declare a scientific discovery of something, the particle accelerator people have been talking about it for a while. And when they were talking about
yeah.
the Higgs boson and stuff, 5 sigma is like 99 points, and I think it's like another 4 nines or something like that. It's like 1 in a million chance of being wrong, and that's for the known for the known unknowns, I would say. Obviously, there could be unknown unknowns. The
It's
thing
all
could
the
just become
unknown unknowns. Those are the hard
yes,
ones.
this is the hard ones. Yes, the thing could just be completely broken and given strangely consistent results. But it's like in the Dilbert comic. Like here's our random number generator 99999. You sure about that's random? Well, that's the problem with randomness. You can never be sure. So
Um, all right. I think, let's see. Tony had, let's see. Oh, PhD Tony said people are suggesting cold atom gravimeters can be used for aeronautic and navigation in GPS denied situations. They can also act as accelerometers, but their sample rate is about 0.05 hertz. It's pretty slow.
yeah, yeah, it's a little bit slow. That's a little bit slow. Well, you could probably. I know they're trying to use that for submarines because we have a fairly highly accurate gravimetric map of the Earth.
Yeah.
So if you correlate your movement and the gravitational acceleration that you're measuring very, very closely to your motion, you are actually able to determine your position just by pattern matching on the gravimetric map. Um,
Hmm.
it's good for subs. I'm not sure it's good enough for aircraft so far. But by the way,
Because they move too fast.
probably because they move too fast, and
Yeah.
mostly it's the dynamics of the situation. The aircraft are in fairly turbulent conditions, because um, the systems that aircraft have to be able to the movements that aircraft have to be able to track are hundreds of degrees of rotation rate, um, vibrations that are very high frequency. So if you're in turbulence, you could easily have more than half a hertz
Hmm.
of perturbations.
Yeah,
So that's a
that's
little
not
bit
good.
That yeah, I mean, ride on aircraft. Everybody who's ridden on an aircraft knows that some rides are a little bit less comfortable than others, and also
Yeah.
the thing has to be able to figure out like it can't lose position when you're, for example, taxiing down on the ground or during a takeoff when the thing is shaking pretty heavily.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Got a couple other questions here. Cody Payne says it almost seems like he's saying that from a certain point of view, airplanes do tip their nose to account for curve. Flurfs will be
yes they do.
so happy.
Oh, well, yes, in a sense they do. At a very slow rate to where it's not perceptible by humans, but the
Yeah.
instruments absolutely do
But
are
they
able to.
don't hold straight and then at some point decide, "Oh, now is the
No,
time I'm going to tip."
no, the entire tipping behavior is a natural result of the aerodynamics. Like
Yeah.
I can get into talking about what dynamic stability is on an aircraft, but basically the thing is designed such that, like, to be honest, the rates of pitch change or like tilt that we're talking about here are so tiny compared to just the regular perturbations of like minor gusts of air. Like a fart in the wind, so to speak, would cause the airplane to have a slightly higher upset. If you like watch any kind of cockpit videos from aircraft, you'll see that the thing actually slowly sort of wobbles all the time. The autopilot never sleeps. It constantly has to make teeny tiny adjustments in the
Mm-hmm.
flight controls. Much like orders of magnitude bigger ones than your rate of movement about the Earth. So
Yeah.
that's really
Or
just
Coriolis.
yes,
Um,
or Coriolis effects.
on my website I have an example calculation of the Coriolis force for an airplane going, I think, 600 miles an hour,
Hmm. Yep.
because Coriolis is directly proportional to the velocity. So when flat earthers are like, "Oh, a helicopter hovering Coriolis," like the velocity is zero, so there's zero Coriolis.
Right. Um,
But anyway, it's rather small. If you want, you can look at the math on there, people.
yes.
So
Yeah, on a helicopter, the only thing you would have to correct for is like the Earth rotational rate, and again, that's like, half the speed of the hand clock on of the hour hand on
yeah.
a clock. So
All right. Street News One says the Delco Carousel IRP based on Apollo guidance.
yes, sir. In fact, you
So,
want to. He just said the magical word here, so he's gonna get some Delco in his face.
uh huh.
There she is.
That looks
So
older.
that looks very old. Yes, indeed. It's in fact from, well, this manual is from
70.
1973. It's revision 5 in 1977. So there you go. And this is the thing that actually was in Concorde as well as on the 747. And yeah, they if you look at the user interface,
And
it's only an 80.
this is a mechanical
Yes.
gyroscope.
Yes, this is a
Okay.
mechanical platform inertial reference system or inertial navigation systems back then. They called it that, INS. But the thing is, it has a mechanical, there we go. It has a mechanical navigation unit. That's a big box that consumes a whole lot of power. Um, and that's where the actual floating
Oh,
gyro platform is. So the way that these things detect, so these do not have ring laser gyros, and the gyro is not strapped down to the aircraft. Instead, the system is designed such that it tries to keep the platform level to local ground. And during alignment, it sees basically that the gyro itself, like the gyro stabilized platform, is slowly drifting. And so it has little torque motors and a feedback loop that continuously tries to right it. And how do I explain the closed loop algorithm there? So the gyro, the platform itself is gyro stabilized to remain stable within inertial space. Then there are 3 accelerometers on there, and when you're on the ground, it measures acceleration above the 2 horizontal gyros and tries to null them out. So it'll basically generate a torquing signal to continuously correct for make sure that the platform remains aligned with local level, such that both accelerometers are reading 0. Because if there's any kind of misalignment, You're going to read a non-zero value.
So what if it's in a, all right, in a, and when it turns, then
So this is for
yeah,
alignment when the airplane's stationary
okay.
on the
But all
ground.
right, so then when it turns, obviously the downward vector changes because of inertia.
Yes. So this is for initial alignment when you're on the ground.
Yeah.
Once you start moving, it stops this torquing behavior. And instead, the torquing behavior goes to correct for your positional movement around the planet. So at that point, you must have entered the initial position, and it knows that its initial speed was 0. So then it starts integrating the speed into a motion vector. And as you're moving through like over the surface of the planet, it basically generates torque correction signals for that automatically.
So can you fool it by being in a constant bank, for example?
No, um, because it does not try to write itself simply based upon accelerations at that point. Once it has not directly, so it writes itself, or rather corrects for drift based on position, and it's the position itself that is integrated um, from the previous accelerometer measurements. But the motion platform essentially at that point is free floating, so to speak, right? It doesn't try to zero out the horizontal and the lateral rates. That zeroing stops after alignment is completed.
Okay.
It probably doesn't quite click yet, but the zeroing behavior of the platform is only running while the airplane is stationary on the ground
Yeah.
during
So
pre-flight.
so I asked this because the uh artificial horizon gyroscopes,
Mhm.
they can be, I think, can be fooled by a constant bank.
On older aircraft with mechanical gyros, yes. If you keep banking for a very long time, they might be a little bit.
Okay.
Depends upon, there are various attitude finding algorithms that might be implemented. On a mechanical gyro, yes, you can.
With pendulous vanes, it could get confused.
It might, yes. Um, on modern electronic gyros, that is much less likely to happen because they can actually correlate, they can actually switch algorithms when they detect motion of a certain particular nature. So if you look at like these cheap gyros that electronic gyros that go into um, or attitude indicator, not gyros, they don't really they contain what's called a MEMS gyro or micro electromechanical system
Yep.
gyro, which are much less precision than a ring laser gyro, but they are still sensitive enough to detect, normal motion about if you're flying about the airplane and stuff. And what they do is they are able to actually correlate, for example, straight and level flight. If you're turning, then your actual vertical gyro will detect a certain rate, and it can correlate that to a bank angle signal
Okay.
or bank angle datum, and it can basically correct to that. I could pull up the simulator here and show you. We have a little study screen in there for extra nerdiness.
But people are mentioning the pendulous veins. Martin H says you can get an ointment for them.
Could be. Like, to be honest, I don't generally deal with these mechanical systems anymore. Yes, they are still being made, sadly. Um,
Really?
yes, I had to train on one. It's stupid. Um, Half the time the thing didn't work. So my flight instructor was like, just look outside. Because I was training in visual flight conditions and I wasn't doing instrument training, so I didn't have to rely on the attitude
Oh,
indicator. That wasn't considered a primary instrument for purely visual flying. So your primaries were airspeed and altitude. If you were,
all right.
yeah, if you were
Henzik is asking if we can get a flurf engineer to come and explain it all. There's
probably melt down.
there is no such thing as a flurf engineer.
Yeah, they'd probably melt down. Oh, there you go. There's some old
Oh yeah.
instrumentation. And yeah, the whole thing works on like numbered waypoints, and you had to manually enter the coordinates of each waypoint one by one. It could only
Oh,
hold nine waypoints, so there's actually a procedure for along the way when you've advanced sufficiently far in the flight plan, it would automatically wrap around back to waypoint one. So you were supposed to update the waypoints that you had already passed to the next ones ahead of you.
oh yeah. You wouldn't want to go back to waypoint one.
Yes, not
Oh,
the old one, the new
yeah,
one.
yeah.
So
Oh, that's crazy. It's just a rotating data structure.
yes. I mean, the thing had like, I don't know, maybe 2 kilobytes of memory or something,
Yeah, yeah.
if that. So I wouldn't be surprised. But it was still fairly sophisticated. Like it could give you
But from
their weight.
73, there's not a whole lot of computation going on.
Yeah, not a whole lot, but a little bit actually.
Yeah.
It's probably all written in Fortran. My God, so much
Oh,
aerospace code is still written in Fortran.
love me some
Um,
Fortran.
yes, sir. So it could give you input like cross-track error, track angle error. So if you were, it actually had great circle code in it, obviously, because it's actually navigating on a globe.
Yeah.
So it can compute like the cross-track your position from the great circle route, and also your track angle error. So if you were flying, a little bit nose left and a little bit nose right, it could give you that.
Huh.
Yeah, these systems, this thing could actually just be coupled up to the autopilot. So obviously, probably ever since like the 1940s, pilots don't actually fly the airplane all the time. You just go crazy. Um, so once the takeoff is over with and you're sufficiently far away, you are allowed to basically just turn on the autopilot, and the autopilot's smart enough on modern aircraft to fly you pretty much almost all the way to the destination. You just change modes and give it some like data entries, but other than that, yeah, it's mostly hands off.
Yeah. As long as you don't forget to put the waypoint number 10 in.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you gotta occupy yourself somehow on a long flight, right? So
Yeah.
that's what you do. So you would check fuel, cross-check your position, and do any kind of data entry. I mean, the entire flight plan sheet that you get from during pre-flight contains every single waypoint, and usually they'll have lines in them that say or data to be entered in when you were supposed to arrive, and then when you actually arrived, and how much fuel you were supposed to have, and how much fuel you actually had. You read that off,
Oh,
and
okay.
obviously, you cross-check along the route to make sure that you don't have a fuel leak and that you're not lost. Because if so, all of a sudden the unit, if you're running behind, or if you've got 10 tons less fuel than you expected, you probably want to catch that early before
Yep.
you're too far out over the ocean. Oh, that's another point I've been meaning to bring up with the flurfs. They'll frequently, actually, I was tracking a flight earlier today. That was really a nice demonstration of the way that Southern Oceanic flights work. As soon as I find the damn window again, it's hiding from me. I am looking for this guy here, Firefox. Yes. So I got to go ahead and reload. Are they still en route? Yes, they are.
Oh, QF64.
Yes. Uh, yeah, Qantas flying from Johannesburg. Uh, are you familiar with why to do this kind of a kink here?
I am not.
So if you just go to like a Great Circle Mapper, this is the sort of shortest route between
Yeah.
Johannesburg and Sydney. And you'll notice that it goes pretty much right over this little island here, the southern French Antarctic island.
Is that
And
Sandwich Island?
could be, I don't, yeah,
Sandwich. That's not Sandwich. Where's
I don't know.
I
Yeah,
think there that's the wrong area for it. Anyway, okay.
that would be further north, right? Anyway, you'll see that they actually deviated and did a bit of a kink here. And it has to do with a thing called ETOPS. Ever heard that term?
I've heard the term.
So it's another one of those reliability things in aviation where um, we so what happens if you have an engine failure, right? One of the engines just goes out. Then what? You're out
Jump.
over the ocean.
You jump
Yeah,
and do a
jump,
cannonball.
preferably. Or don't forget to pack your parachute. Um, pack your own. No, so the the way that aviation has dealt with this in the past, before about 1985, is there was a regulation in most countries that said any aircraft with less than 3 engines, so basically 2 engines and fewer, had to be within 60 minutes of a suitable diversionary airport at every time. So if I go and put in 60 minutes, and do they have 777 is close enough as a you'll notice that we can't really go all that far away from, like, we can't even cross parts of inside of Australia.
Oh, that's what those lighter circles are.
Yes, so ETOPS means extended range twin engine operations. So in the 80s, we've pretty much worked out that, okay, turbine engines are extremely highly reliable. So your chances of having a dual engine failure, completely unrelated, is extremely slim. So then they've said, okay, you know what, we can actually probably trust this thing. There haven't been that many in-flight engine shutdowns. So again, risk analysis models and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we figured out that we don't actually necessarily need 4 engines to fly over this kind of a stretch of water. So they instituted regulations that allow you to increase that time away from a suitable diversionary airport. And it's not just a matter of like you just get a number and just go ahead and have fun. Um, ETOPS operations have a whole, again, there's books on this written and there's training required. The entire airline, the aircraft, the flight crew, and the airline has to be ETOPS certified. And they give you then a number. So it'll be either like 120 minutes. So what does that do for us? So that gives us a little bit more leeway, but you can see that for these
You
southern
still
routes,
can't
we
do it.
still
Yeah.
still can't do it. Not this kind of way. Like we could go perhaps over Madagascar and do a little
Yeah.
UE here or a little bend, but that gives us quite a bit of extra track miles. And these days, aircraft like the 787 here typically come from the factory with fairly high ETOPS ratings, somewhere in the vicinity of 300 seconds. Sorry, 300 minutes. So if you go like, and it also depends on what the airline is certified for. They have to have like diversionary procedures in place. They have to have contracts with airports, ground handling, and that kind of stuff. Because, what if you suddenly need to do a diversion and you suddenly just dump 500 passengers into a tiny little grass strip somewhere in the middle of nowhere? That won't work. So you have to have like backup plans. And so if we go to like 330 minutes, that gives us already more than we need. So I'm pretty sure that Qantas here do not have ETOPS 330 certification. They probably have less than that, something like 240 maybe, or 285. Yeah, somewhere either this or 285 probably.
There
Yeah,
you
so that's
go. Okay.
basically why they got to make that kind of an extra little kink in the route.
Yeah, to avoid that little area that's not close enough. So
Yes,
that island, oh, they're quite a bit north of it there.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Chances are that they have ETOPS 240 probably, which forces them to fly quite a bit further north.
Yeah, and it's a
And
little longer route too.
yes,
Yeah.
quite a bit actually.
Yeah.
I have my little sky vector here. I was playing around with some stuff here with route planning. Let me get rid of the weather here. I don't want text weather and temporary flight restrictions go away. So they were flying from FAOR to YSSY. So this would have been the sort of most direct route, and it says 5963 nautical miles. The actual route that they're flying is probably closer to something like this,
Okay.
and that gives them an extra about 100 nautical miles of track.
Okay.
And, airlines are penny pinching bastards,
Yeah,
so
they have to.
pretty much it is the biggest part of their expense. So they will find a way to save on that money. if they can, within obviously legal bounds. Again,
Yeah.
heavily regulated industry. And of course, on Flurf, this is just completely insane. And one thing I frequently find that when people discuss flights on a globe versus on a flat Earth, they gloss over a few details.
Yeah.
If you, I mean, of course, not, you don't usually think about this unless you deal with aircraft on a day-to-day basis, but the ranges required would frequently on flat Earth actually exceed aircraft range. Like the thing just doesn't have enough fuel to fly. So on here, you see this is like 6,000 nautical miles to fly the most direct route
Yeah.
from Johannesburg out to Sydney. On a flat Earth, when I graph this thing, and of course then they'll refuse to provide any maps. Suddenly the maps are gone.
Yeah.
But if you graph it out on a flat Earth, not only would they have to fly in a completely unrealistic direction,
They
like
they
over
don't have any
India.
ETOPS problems.
Yes, sure. In this case, problem is that if you actually like measure the length of the line here, it comes out to something like 12,000 nautical miles.
Yeah.
The Boeing 787 can't fly 12,000 nautical miles. It just doesn't have enough fuel. Just doesn't have the range.
So, well, it's worse than that though, because people have flown that and they know that it
Yes.
doesn't take that route. It actually goes south
Yeah.
of Australia. So now draw
It's
that
even more.
same route on this map, and you know what their excuse is? They say it's got it's they fly at the different elevations to get jet streams. Like, well, it's this is two and a half times longer. But yeah, if you do that route, you're looking 4 times longer. So it doesn't help you to have a 200-mile-an-hour jet stream or a 300-mile-an-hour jet stream.
Yes.
You need a 1,500-mile-an-hour jet stream in one direction, and a 1,500-mile-an-hour jet stream in the other direction. It has to be completely predictable.
Yes. It doesn't work. And by the way, the wind speed indications on aircraft are typically only go up to 255 knots, which is about 280 miles an hour. That's like that's like the extreme range of data display. By the way, the inertial reference system also gives you wind speed from basically the fact that it observes the true airspeed of the aircraft and compares to its internal ground speed measurement, and it is able to give you
And
both
it's
the
it's getting the
direction
ground
and
speed
speed.
measurements through the INS.
Yes, for the inertial system.
Yeah.
So completely independently, it knows it's essentially it's a vector subtraction, right? So it knows its ground speed vector, it knows the way that the aircraft's nose is pointed, and what we call the air data system is giving it in terms of true airspeed versus like the oncoming air. And the delta, the difference between them is simply the wind component vector. And we rely on that quite a bit during landing
Yeah.
because we need to know if the wind's coming from the right or the left, or from where we don't want the wind to be coming from, which is the back.
Yeah. So, it's just it baffles me that they would say something so ridiculous for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, Taking Back Eden says, do you think there's anything that changes that they made to the map to get it patented? And he's a flat earther, so no. When you say the North Pole's in the middle and the sun circles, this is the only map that matches that, because latitude longitude is it can't be determined using flat earth geometry, but it doesn't matter. Latitude longitude is correct. Your GPS on your phone works. If you get in the car in Australia and you say drive from Melbourne to Sydney, it'll get it right. So the latitude longitude is correct, at least those numbers, right? So you don't get to say the map is skewed, because that what's that line of longitude that goes through Sydney there that we're looking at?
That's gonna be like 20 degrees south.
No, it's on the map. Keep going up left there. You see that? Follow that line. Oh yeah, but now scroll Scroll up to the perimeter of the map.
Oh, right. Oh,
It's
line of
that right.
longitude.
It's right there. Yeah. What is that?
150.
150. All right. So
Yeah.
150 is the approximate line of longitude that goes through Sydney there. You
Mhm.
don't get to say, well, it was modified, because you can personally go to Sydney, pull out your GPS and say, what's my longitude? It'll say 150. So this map is the only map that works if you are saying that the
For,
North Pole's in the middle of the sun doing circles.
forget GPS. Sailors have determined this way in the past. They needed
Yeah.
to. Otherwise, they wouldn't find their damn way.
Yes. Like, oh,
So
they're just lying about how it's done. How did they do that? How could they construct that lie? You are actually at that longitude, and you can do things other than just looking at your GPS. You can look at the time. So you could
yes.
you could go to Greenwich. You could set your watch, your mechanical watch, to noon there, and then you could row your rowboat to Sydney, and then look at your watch and look when the sun goes to local solar noon, and
which
compare
is
the time.
which is how navigation was done in the past before the age of like global positioning.
Yeah.
So yeah, you needed a clock that was stable on a moving boat, which is you know um,
Mid 1700s is when that technology was invented.
yeah, it's not so easy to do by it's like just by pure experimentation.
Your grandfather clock with those hanging weights
Mm-mm.
doesn't work on a boat.
Yeah, the thing is just gonna go out of whack. So that was the trick. Yeah, Christian Huygens was one of the guys that developed some of the first ones, if I remember right. Wasn't it?
Okay, so I don't know if it was Huygens.
I know he
Uh,
designed a few of them, but there might have been
yeah,
many competing
well, there
designs.
was. I mean, there's a bounty. England had a bounty for determining your position while at sea.
Hmm.
Uh, just like I have a bounty for flat earthers to determine their position. $10,000
Anywhere.
is pretty good motivation. Yet they don't do it. Why is that?
Yeah, strange, isn't it? I'm pretty sure we can guess. Just doesn't work. But yeah, I
Uh,
mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? Airplanes, flat earthers just trust the airplanes are going to get where they're going to go,
yeah,
and yet the code in these systems
yeah.
has to.
Joe Hill flew an airplane from Minneapolis to Colorado to debate me on Saturday. Somehow it worked.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of like I said, the experiment that the Earth is rotating and the fact that you can determine your true heading and latitude just by looking at the inertial sensors. That experiment is conducted every day, thousands of times,
Yeah.
and nobody bats an eye because, I mean, these systems were designed by pretty smart people.
They use their GPS in their phone when they're driving somewhere too. All right, so I've got a few other questions here. Um, let's see if there's any pertinent to you. I'll come back around to the other
Sure.
ones when Toto and I are done talking. Um, Flurfs, a battle against misinformation says Flurfs want you to believe them because they say things. Your guest is the perfect example of a convergence of confirmed information from many sources.
I suppose, yeah, you could say that.
I have to take
Yeah,
care of the dog tonight.
absolutely. Nice puppy.
Okay. All right. Are you going to bed now? All right. You want to give me Knuckles so everybody can see? You have to go right about here. There you go.
Super envious of the fact that you could get a free puppy. Where do I get that?
Yeah. Well, in Texas. They're gone now, but it was near Naples, Texas. Here it is. He is just just floppy. When you pick
Super.
him up, he just goes all limp. There he is. There you go. And then he likes to sit on the floor right by my feet here. So,
Neat.
hey, no, don't chew on that. No, that's not. He wanted to chew on this. All right, that's what puppies do. They chew on stuff. This right here. He's like, hey, that's food. That's not food. Okay.
Yeah, they do have a chew reflex, I guess. But anyway, yeah, flights just don't make any sense. And it's the ironic thing is I keep seeing some of these arguments come up, and it's just pure ignorance from the fact like, why aren't there more? So I think back in the past it used to be that there are no direct flights in the southern hemisphere. And then they've modified the claim, maybe some, but some of them did, some of them didn't, that there's very few flights in the southern hemisphere. And there's actually a good reason for that. First of all, there's not that many people there.
Yep.
And second of all, many of the flights, are you familiar with the term cabotage laws?
Yes. But go
Yeah.
ahead and explain it.
So when the International Civil Aviation Organization was established, they basically stipulated some what they call freedoms of the air to allow basically civil air travel to work planet-wide pretty much. And almost every country is a signatory or a member of the ICAO, what we call it, the International Civil Aviation Organization. And some of those rules do allow pretty much mostly free traversal of the airspace of most countries, but many countries impose mostly market protection laws, which essentially prevent a foreign company or a foreign registered company from operating domestic flights within a country or between two countries that are not that company's domestic country. And it's essentially really it's a method to prevent like a super large, powerful, low-cost operator just hollowing out your entire airline industry. So imagine if suddenly you had Europe's Ryanair come over and fly within the United States, there would be a fair few airlines pissed off there because Ryanair is extremely low cost and they would just completely undercut everybody else. So there have been treaties and rules put in place that prevent an airline from conducting a direct flight either within a foreign country or between two foreign countries that are not without doing an intermediate landing in their own, basically.
Yeah. So Emirates could not do QF20 or 64 that you just showed
exactly.
there because
they would
don't have
to
a
fly.
presence. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd have to fly to Dubai, land, take on other passengers, basically deboard the passengers and put them on another flight, and from there they can.
Well, and a lot of the flights that they have found initially weren't even one airplane. It was you're transferring.
Yes.
Right. with a who knows layover. They're like, they had to stop and refuel. No, it's you get off the plane, you're going somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, have they never taken a connecting flight?
No.
You don't usually stay on the same plane.
So the very first one, like Mark Sargent, back in 2015, this was his thing. He's like, there's no flights. Even then there were, though. So then he changed it to you can't ever get on them. They'll cancel it. Then he changed it to, well, when they're in the air, then they go off of GPS and they can't get tracked. So as if so what's on screen now, like as it takes off, they'd claim it takes off going south from Sydney till it gets over the water, and then it's not tracked anymore, and then it takes a different route. Like you'd go over Australia. You'd see Australia and the complete lack of water.
like you'd be able to tell, well, there's a fair amount of Earth you see, and you'd be able to recognize landmarks and features.
But then,
pretty sure Saudi Arabia looks different from like Madagascar.
Well, but then when it started to get close, they'd have to go back to, somewhere over the ocean, take a hard turn to get the plane oriented right, and then come back on the radar.
So they just trace out along the coast here.
And so now the current one is now they're like, oh, that was kind of dumb. But I've also heard people literally Jin CBR1 has said, oh, not Jin CBR1. Maybe he has, but Banjo. Effie Banjo said, oh, it's twins. They get on the plane in Sydney, take off, and then land at a hidden location. And then their twin double lands several hours later in a plane that took off from a fake spot and then lands in Johannesburg.
We
Really?
some flirts should try and get on a plane and then, I don't know, live stream the thing. That'd be fun.
So
Get the flirts to hate on each other.
so a flurf who's no longer a flurf, did
Ah,
QF27
right.
and looked out and saw. I think they even saw some ice flow to the south
Right. Yeah,
in the
possible.
air, and so they're
Yeah, this
like,
thing.
"Oh, the magnetic declination was wrong." Not declination. They just said the magnetic compass was wrong because they don't know what declination is, right?
Right.
Um, and I looked at that flight and I said, no, that was completely correct. Maybe it was a one coming in towards South Africa. Oh, no, no, no. It was yeah, I think it was QF 63 and 64 because
Right.
because the South Magnetic Pole is south of Australia there.
Right.
And so when you're south of Australia in the ocean, the magnetic declination is crazy.
Yes. In fact, I could bring up a map of it. But yes, yeah, the dipole moment gets all kind of messed up there.
I have let me see if I can grab it quick. I have a magnetic I took the actual uh, magnetic declination map and made it polar.
Oh, neat.
Let's see. This is the magnetic inclination.
I've got the data bit. Well, I've got it on a Mercator projection, but yeah, more or
Yeah.
less
All
Mercator.
right. Okay. Yep. I got it. So let me drop it here, and I will share. I'll share it to you so you see it as well. So you'll have to stop your share
Sure.
for a second.
As soon as I figure out how.
Oh, I can do it.
More. Oh, cool. Thank you.
All right. So this is, I just took the magnetic
Oh, neat.
declination map and then made it polar in Photoshop. So if you look there, south of Australia, you've got the South Magnetic Pole up in the
Hmm.
upper right. And so those lines coming out there to the side the, towards the, it's all messed up because west and east is
Towards.
swapped towards the
Um.
west, but down and right
Yes.
on this
Yes.
that declination is very weird. So correct declination or nearly correct would be following the radial lines of longitude if there's no such thing as declination, but you can see they're horizontal in respect to the lines of longitude there to the south and well to the right end of Australia there. So yeah,
Hmm.
declination is definitely screwy there, as predicted on the globe.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's why we don't rely on magnetic navigation near the poles.
Yeah, yep, it's all over the place. Um, I live in Minnesota, and zero magnetic declination, at least for a time, went right through Mall of America, not far from where I live. So
Neat.
um, in Minnesota, declination is pretty much not an issue. So
Yeah, I have a bit of a hate on. So there's a type of navigational beacon in aviation in use called a VOR, VHF Omni Range, and they basically give you the bearing from the station to you. If you're on the aircraft, they basically give you the bearing from the station to you, right? It's called a radial measurement, and these radials are typically calibrated to be magnetic, within the local frame of the system, of the VOR station. But the problem is when they initially aligned it with the magnetic north, they need to keep on adjusting it as the declination changes locally,
Uh-huh.
because otherwise it's going to drift out of alignment. And so I have a personal hate on for VOR stations that are neglected. If you look on the database online, they have declinations that have drifted by like 5 or 10 degrees because they've been last surveyed in like 40 years ago, and
Oh,
nobody ever bothered fixing them.
oh, that's crazy. All right,
So it's,
so I want to make sure people know what declination is. Some might not. Um, so if the magnetic field of the Earth was very simple, if it was completely symmetric, and it was where the magnetic poles were matching the geographic poles, then there would be no such thing as declination. But since that's not the case, the magnetic field of the Earth is moves, and
and
it's somewhat inconsistent. If you were to model it, they say somewhere around, like, if you had one giant magnet and then
yeah,
like 10 different smaller magnets kind of embedded in the Earth, that's what it looks like.
yeah, in order to be, yeah, in order to be perfectly in line with geographic um, headings and orientations, it would basically have to be a pure dipole, a pure magnetic
Yeah,
dipole with
yeah,
no other components to it. So anywhere where you were on Earth, you'd be able to just tell your precise true heading based upon a compass reading.
yeah.
Unfortunately, the magnetic moment of the Earth is not nearly as uniform. It's pretty messy if you get into details.
And
Um,
this here shows the pure ignorance and gullibility and how easily indoctrinated flat earthers are, because they'll take the Gleason map and they'll put a single magnet underneath it, and then they'll pull out their cheap little compass and they'll say, look, it works, and they'll put the compass around it, and it works for that. Not complete, being so just blatantly ignorant of that's not representative of the actual magnetic field of the Earth.
yes.
And you
It,
tell them
it,
that, and they'll say, "Nuh-uh, that's right."
yeah, well, in aviation school, apparently we didn't get that memo because we have to, it's part of the written test, even for like the private pilot's licenses. You need to be able to, in aviation, it's usually called magnetic variation. Declination is the physics term. Um, but it's, yeah, we have to be able to tell if we read a chart and it says on there magnetic variation 3 degrees east. We have to be able to correlate that to a reading on our instruments, because otherwise you don't pass your licensing test.
Yeah,
Because even though we are, to be honest, generally, when we're flying on magnetic headings, for like cross-country navigation, we typically accept to within ±5 degrees, no big deal. But that is, you're not supposed to just go la-di-da and completely ignore precision. You have to be able to factor that in, get it as close as you can, but we also understand that we're going to be a little bit off, a few degrees off of reality.
yeah.
And there's again whole instrument books on instrument navigation and how do you navigate an aircraft when you can't see the ground, you can't see outside, you can't see anything. How do you not get
It,
lost?
it's the landing. How do you land when you can't see? That's what gets me.
Yeah, that's I could get into the technical details there if you want, but
I don't. Maybe a future one. That's really more about how to fly a plane than related to flat Earth
it's
type
it
stuff.
it it cuts across many fields of
I,
study, many fields of automation and instrumentation. It is both about navigation, so how are you actually able to funnel an aircraft onto a bit of pavement, like in the grand scheme of things, typical runway widths are 150 feet. How do you correlate a navigation system, as I explained before, 2 nautical miles per hour drift? You got
oh
to somehow funnel the airplane down to 150 feet piece of pavement. That gets tricky.
yeah,
Um,
because 2 nautical miles is not close enough for that.
Nowhere near. And you
Yeah.
might have been flying for more than an hour. So how are you able? So it's a navigation problem, and then it's also the next stage is if you're talking about a system that automatically lands, it becomes a giant automation problem. So how do you design an automation system that is able to perform this function in a highly, highly reliable manner? Because if an autopilot, for example, and one of the things that kind of makes me a little bit hesitant to say that aircraft are ever going to be fully automated or fully autonomously flying, because you don't want to know how that sausage is made, how many times a pilot needs to stop an airplane every day in the tens of thousands of flights that happen every day from killing everybody on board. Like the computers are pretty dumb.
Yeah,
And
they'll just do that. That's the 737 problem.
right.
The 737 thought one of the instruments thought that it was pitched. What did it think it was pitched up, but when it wasn't.
Right.
So the pilot's pulling back on the yoke, but the plane says, "I'm already pitched up. I'm not going to honor your request to do that."
Yeah, there was a yeah, I know exactly which incident you're talking about. It was actually two of them, I think, in the recent like
Yeah.
decade. There was one, I think somewhere in Australia. It was an Airbus A330, and two of the three air data inertial reference systems um, got a false. It was either an angle of attack reading or it was an inertial attitude reading, but I'm not sure which one of those. I have to look up the exact incident report. But yes, the Airbus A330 has a fly-by-wire system where it is allowed to override pilot inputs to avoid an excessively high angle of attack
Hmm.
onto the air, which causes aerodynamic stall, right? So even if you fully pull back on the sticks, the Airbus says, I'm going to protect you. But,
And then crash.
right. Well, unfortunately, in that case, they were at 35,000 feet. So it took them about 5,000 feet. There was about a minute of terror aboard until everybody figured out, okay, which was the right combination of air data computer disablements that they had to put in to get back control. But yes, even if both pilots fully pulled back on their sticks and yanked them off, it would not have overridden the computer on an Airbus. The fly-by-wire system has essentially final authority. On a Boeing,
Oh,
it's it's you still have final authority as the pilot. You are able to override it even if it goes completely haywire. Which philosophy is better? There are arguments for and against it because human squishy brains are also kind of faulty.
yeah.
And there have been incidents where pilots unknowingly there's an entire area of study about this. There was a crash about 5 years ago in I want to say it was Atlanta, but no, it wasn't Atlanta. It was an Amazon Prime flight. It was operated on behalf of Amazon Prime, but the actual was Atlas Air, or I think was the actual operator. It was a 767, where perfectly working airplane, no faults on the airplane. But if you look at the ground, at the actual flight track from the flight data, it was on approach, about 5,000 feet up, and suddenly the airplane just go boop down
Huh.
into the ground. It was a cargo flight, so fortunately, a bit of a silver lining in that dark cloud. There was only two dead, but nevertheless, very
Well, hold
unfortunate.
on a second. Somebody's feeties booties didn't get delivered on time,
Yes.
right?
Um, but yeah, and it
Pity.
turns out it appears to have been spatial disorientation where your inner ear and your sense of spatial perception just gets completely messed up in certain cases where the pilot thought he had like a vertigo sensation that he was actually
Oh,
pitching up. So he instinctively pushed forward on the flight controls and pitched a perfectly functional airplane down into the ground. And
wow.
it was just some complete disconnect. It's really difficult. Like, how do you examine that, right? But yeah, it's certainly humans are also a factor that can affect flight safety in a negative way.
Yeah, that's what I look at when talking about automated car driving. You know, people look down at the radio, they look at their phone, they look to the side, and they get tired, they make mistakes, they get distracted. Computers don't. So that's a good thing. But computers mistake people for not people and keep going, like
Yeah.
happened in the Uber a while ago. And and I live in Minnesota, and when there's snow, I don't know how you're writing that software.
Right.
So
Yeah. Uh,
good luck with
I,
that.
rem I remember there being a clip of a Tesla where there was two guys inside talking up the automation, the autopilot system, and how it was super great and whatever, and it's safer than a human driver. And the first, as he finished saying that sentence, the automation system saw a bike rider next to the car and decided to just go for him. It's
Huh.
like, oh my God, it's become self-aware. It sensed blood, it tasted blood, and it wants to kill us all. So he had to quickly grab the thing back, and it was like, holy crap, do we leave this in the video? But yeah, it was a bit of a pants down moment. Um, and the problem with automation of ground vehicles is you have a lot less reaction time. Because on an aircraft, even if the automation just goes completely haywire, you've got usually about a good 10 to 15 seconds before you need to really do much of anything. Even if, because there's a lot of room, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of spacing.
it's a good sized runway and shouldn't be anything else in the way and no people running
For runway,
across.
there,
Yeah.
if where you're talking about like landing and takeoffs, that's a little bit of a different story. That then it gets a little bit closer to cars. But
Yeah.
um, when you're talking about like just in the air, you can literally disconnect the autopilot and take your hands off the flight controls. Just sit there, you know, fingers interlaced, and watch the thing for a good few minutes before it will actually deviate significantly from the flight path.
Yeah.
By contrast, try and take your hands off the steering wheel for 15 seconds in a car.
Depends on the
Not
car.
well.
My small car, if you do that for 15 seconds during the ditch, my newer car, you're good.
Yeah, unless you're driving on a bumpy road, in which case.
Oh yeah, trouble then.
So yeah, for aircraft, the automation designs are sometimes they're a little bit simpler in some respects, but at the same time, they're much more difficult in the reliability aspect because you've got a whole lot more lives on the line, and the certification requirements are
Oh yeah.
extremely high. So the like, what do you do when faults happen,
Yeah.
basically?
So Dr. Nimrod says humans are always the problem. The computer is only as good as the human who programmed it. But they're doing AI and training it with the corpus now. That's not as good as the programmer now. That's as good as the corpus you fed it, and as good as, yes, the programmer, as in whether or not they manufactured a good AI. But imagine you could manufacture a perfect AI. If you didn't feed it the corpus for driving in the snow, you're not driving in the snow.
Yeah, that too. Also, it's not a thing that's done in aviation. In aviation, we do not rely um, on AI at all. Not at this point anyway, and not probably for the foreseeable future.
So
Because essentially,
I write spam filtering software, and
mhm.
we use a tiny bit of AI in our product. But I look at some of the other solutions that our competitors do that are AI driven. I'm like, I see the bad guys doing things that mess up the AI.
Could be, yeah, very much. Yeah, in flight automation and for avionic systems and autopilots and that kind of stuff, you never have like there's zero AI in there at all because you want to have everything be provable. So
Oh yeah,
there are megatons of MATLAB models that are going to mathematically prove that the autopilot, given these performance parameters, is dynamically stable and will not mess up. Or if your conditions go outside of that, you disconnect the autopilot for sure, and you basically leave the human take over, and then you have like
yeah,
attitude recovery and that kind of stuff. But you are never going to put into service any kind of a system where you cannot put a guarantee on it, because again, there's liabilities and huge amounts of money on the line.
Yeah.
So these systems are always, 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 always designed around mathematically provable models, except when they're not, and then they crash due to like some idiot did a mishandled a pointer. And in that case, it's usually not that kind of a critical flight system. But yes,
Mishandled a pointer. Never.
never. Well, I never. But I've heard of such occurrences. But
Well,
yeah, it does
if you
happen
write
in
in Java, you can't.
yeah, but again, most of the software is written in Fortran, so
Still?
yes.
Oh my gosh.
Well, not
There's
my software, but
but
yeah,
there's
software.
does Fortran use pointers?
Oh yeah,
It does.
Fortran is
Okay.
the first high-level language. 19, it's from 1956.
Wow.
Well, actually, no, they've upgraded now. The latest batch of code that I got from one of the avionics manufacturers in Fortran 77.
Oh my
So yeah,
gosh. What was it? It was supposed to be every 11 years, but I think they missed. They didn't do 88. They got 90. Is that right?
95. Yeah,
95. Oh, they missed it by more than.
yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, Fortran is still widely used in the aerospace industry. They are looking at migrating over to, well, I'm not sure C++, but I know recently Rust got a lot of
Really?
positive. Hmm?
Really? Rust?
Yes.
Wow.
Haven't you heard? The US government endorsed it, so that's how you know it's not cool anymore. Uh, but yes, there was some movement towards getting some more rustiness in the field, which I
Wow.
think is a good thing, to be honest. Rust is a good language for writing fault-tolerant systems.
Rust
But yes,
77?
for probably not. Probably more like Rust from 10 years ago, but whatever. Like
Good
talking
for you.
about software, the amount of stuff that they do to like test some of the software is pretty insane. Imagine having to write a test suite that hits every single instruction in your code. So the actual generated binary is run through a test battery, and the test battery is not considered complete until you have tested every single instruction path in the shipped binary.
It makes sense. Yeah.
And even then, it
Wow.
still occasionally crashes. I've had our consultant pilots report like, yeah, I've had a few flight management system resets in the Airbus, and then we had to taxi back to the gate and do a full power cycle on the airplane.
You have to turn it off and back on again.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So Matters Now mentioned that in the 60s and 70s, the landings on the moon were done by meat. And more recently, they've been done by computer. And when it was done by meat, it was better, he
It wasn't
said.
actually done by me. That's the funny part is so the Apollo guidance computer, if you look into its software design, is amazing. It's incredibly ahead of its time, probably by at least 20 years or so, probably more than that. It was fault tolerant to an insane degree, in the sense that not because they didn't have room enough for more than one computer on board, so they didn't write a redundant computer system. Instead, they designed the software to be insanely fault tolerant to the point where it checkpoints its own execution along the way. So if there's a massive problem with the actual executing code, it will do a soft reset and restart from the checkpoint going forward. So, and as for the actual landing code, there was something like two or three, no, probably 3 to 4 different modes for landing. So it was actually capable of fully automated landing, and that's what they were planning to use on
Okay.
Apollo 11. Then there was
Then
a
they switched
secondary
it off.
mode.
Yeah.
Well, they switched it into a kind of semi-automatic mode. It wasn't fully manual. There was a third backup, which is the fully manual mode, but they didn't want to go to that because that is actually fairly intense on the pilot. They switched it into a mode where it goes into it's probably a fourth mode actually. They switched it into a mode um, where Neil could actually just go ahead and with his hand controller redesignate a new landing spot. So he would basically just push forward, and the computer would read back on essentially like a scale on a screen on the actual like glass which it was looking out of, where the predicted landing point was. And then there was, for the final landing, I think they were in essentially what is kind of like a fly-by-wire mode for modern aircraft, wherein Neil's hand controller did not actually directly connect to the thrusters. Rather, the hand controller, the joystick, was a rate input signal. So if you held the joystick like half deflected, that would command like a 1 degree per second rate of rotation. So it give you a little burst of the RCS motors, starts you rotating at that speed. And if you held the hand controller in that position, it wouldn't keep burning the RCS motors. It would just do a quick burst and stop and just let you slowly rotate at the desired rate. And if you
Oh,
recenter the hand controller, it would do an opposite burst and stabilize you at the attitude. So it would do attitude keeping. So it's still, so to speak,
wow.
fly by wire, which is really neat.
So somebody's asking how much memory. 15-bit word length plus 1-bit parity. Oh my gosh. And it had 2048 words. So it's 4K
Yes.
about in RAM.
Yes.
And then that's magnetic core memory. And
Yes.
then the ROM, which is where the software resided, was 36,000
K.
words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 70K.
So a word. Yeah. So we only deal with bytes today.
Yes.
8 bits. So this is saying a word is 15 bits, but rounded up to 16 just to be a little bit flexible. A word is 2 bytes. So it's 36K words, which is double that, 72K bytes.
Now, you want to know the screwy part about its architecture? It used 1's complement for integers. You know 2's complement.
Yeah.
Well, 1's complement is a weirder version of that, which has a -0 in it.
Oh, yeah. I remember studying that.
Yes. So they would actually use a positive and -0 value to distinguish certain states of a numerical quantity.
Oh, that sounds dirty. That just sounds so naughty.
It is. It was. I mean, back in the day, they didn't really know what they were doing. But interestingly enough, it actually had. So even though you could program, it has a really weird assembly language. It had like only like 16 instructions, which made it really limited. But since they knew that, programming in that would be an absolute pain in the butt to get anything sensible done, they actually had written a higher level interpreter for a symbolic assembly language that was running on top of it that had things like matrix operations. It ran slow as hell. Yes, it could do matrix operations.
That's insane.
Yeah. And they used that
But it was in assembler too?
Yes, it was a higher level assembler.
It was assembler that got compiled to assembler.
Not quite compiled. It actually was stored that way in memory, and the interpreter was written in the actual machine level assembly.
So it had a virtual machine.
Yes, it was a VM, pretty much.
Oh, jeez.
And it was a cooperatively scheduled multitasking operating system as well, which had the capability of running up to 8 or something like that, 8 jobs at the same time. And it had both a software and a hardware watchdog, which if the executive was getting behind, so it was a real-time operating system. So if the executive couldn't keep up and keep the hardware watchdog regularly updated, it would actually hard reset the machine. That's what happened on Apollo 11, I think 3 times during the landing.
So a lot of that, I think people won't understand.
Yeah.
Sorry. It might not be worthwhile to try to explain it if you don't know what all of those things meant.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But one of the things, that's one of the ways you can absolutely verify that that the moon landings absolutely super duper did happen, is because we have restored an actual, like there's a video up on YouTube where they've restored an Apollo guidance computer back to working order. They loaded the actual original software, hooked up simulated inputs from Orbiter Flight Simulator, which is a space flight simulator, which simulates, flight in space, right? They've simulated all the sensors and feeding that into a real AGC and running the real flight software. and they did an actual simulated lunar landing, and the thing worked exactly as described and as designed because, no surprises, the thing was designed by people to actually do it. So the
Yeah.
entire argument of like, oh, how could it have landed on the moon with a computer that has the performance of like my little watch here? Well, they just got it done. The software is out there. If you want, the entire source code is open.
Yeah.
Have fun. And in fact, there are gate accurate software simulations of the code. So it's not a matter of like I'm trusting somebody on YouTube. No, there are crazy people out on the internet that have written a gate accurate simulation of the entire AGC in software, and you can literally just run the thing in order with the original flight software.
Here's the Nintendo, the original Nintendo. There are people that are writing new games for it.
Yes, sir.
There are YouTube channels dedicated to that, and milking every bit of performance out of it that they can.
Yes, and the
It's kind of it's definitely an interesting
the thing is
tech hobby.
the Apollo guidance computer and its software was designed in such a way that they knew exactly how much time each piece of the program took to execute. So therefore, they could build in hard time boundaries to know that, okay, we've gotten up to here in the computation, and we know that this has taken this many milliseconds, and we are not allowed to take more than X number of milliseconds. So now we got to actually yield control back to the executive because, it's cool that you're now computing your beautiful, orbital navigation matrix, but at the same time, we got to get the damn, the landing radar signal read back because we've got an interrupt for it, and we need to like read the height above ground and that kind of stuff. So everything was designed such that it was provably correct.
All right, I'll explain this. Cooperatively multitasking operating system. So when you're running a program and it's cooperatively multitasking, it runs for a bit and then it says, I'll let the taskmaster, I'll yield to you. You do what you want. You get back to me when you're ready. And so then the taskmaster says, "Was does anybody else want to run? You get your chance. You get your chance. And now you come back around. All right, you get your chance again. So your program's always sitting in a loop. You enter the loop. You do what you want, and then quickly, hopefully, you come back to it. And of course, the problem is you could get tasks that are hogging, poorly written or something went wrong. That then you have to say, it depends on the computer. Then you said there's interrupts, so an interrupt will just say you're done anyway, even though you didn't yield.
Yes. So yeah, and a lot of this actually to this day, NASA has insanely stringent software design requirements. So one of the things is that anytime you're processing data in a loop, NASA's coding guideline says the loop has to have a finite upper bound. Such that it is provably by static analysis. Nice kitty. So that provably by static analysis, you can check to make sure that the task finishes.
So you can't have a loop that's just a while without an exit.
Yes, it can't just be dependent. The exit can't just be dependent upon the data you're processing. There has to be a fixed upper bound. Like, say you're processing an image from a sensor, then since you know the size of the image, theoretically, it should never be more than a million iterations of the loop. So you literally have to have a counter at the top in the for loop. Otherwise, they're gonna say, nope, this code ain't coming in.
Yeah.
And there's other things like they don't use dynamic memory, so no malloc, no free. They use very simple flow constructs, no go-tos. They completely abhor recursion. So there's no
I
recursion
love
at all.
recursion.
Oh yeah. There's also no all code functions should fit within 1 to 2 maximum screens. All inputs into a function must be validated before they're used.
So you had to write the code to validate the data coming in.
Yes.
Oh, jeez. And the function must only be 3 screens.
Yes, and all return values from functions that can return an error have to be checked as well. So it gets very tedious writing that kind of code.
Wow.
I mean, what are you gonna do if you have a probe that's a million miles away and there's
Oh
nobody
yeah.
nobody ever.
You can't just yeah, you can't just catch an exception and then suppress it.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Uh
Send the spacecraft tumbling off into space and nobody will ever know what the hell happened.
that picture of well, I don't remember her name, but one of the software developers from NASA with that stack of
Mhm.
source code that's 3 to 4 feet tall printed out.
Yes. I think I know who you mean. I forgot her name as well.
Yeah.
The only person who kind of comes to my mind right now is Don Iles, who's the guy who wrote a lot of the original Apollo source code. But yeah, I mean, there were obviously other people working on
Yeah. Yeah.
code and stuff before that, and outside of that, of course. Again, even down to like the way that you can tell for sure that the hardware absolutely the landings did happen is because you can literally take pieces of most of the schematics for all the systems are up there if you want. Like the guys that did the Apollo guidance computer restoration recently are now have then started doing like they're trying to restore the S-band data transmitter, which is a piece of analog equipment that is basically responsible for the data link back down to Earth. So how the hell did they get data from Earth or and live video, but as well? How did they get live video from the moon? Well, that box over there did it, and here's the exact schematic of how it works. And take it to a suitably qualified electrical engineer, and he'll tell you, yeah, that's what it does.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing now that this tech is 50, 60 years old now, so reconstructing some of this kind of stuff, if you really wanted to, is hobbyist type things now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you wanted to really, really, really hard, you could probably build a GPS receiver by hand these days. I'm
Yeah.
wondering what.
I've read some of the specification and how it's done, and
Oh yeah, it's
yeah,
public
yeah, yeah,
if you
and
wanted to.
Flat Earthers like, well, I want to see the source code. It's there. The source code is there. I want to see the source code for the software that's running on the satellites. No, you don't. All that matters is it's sending out its location and the time. That's
Yeah,
essentially what it's doing.
and the proof is in the math. So go ahead and have
Yeah.
fun. The fact that given the signals, it works. I mean, recently I was in a flat Earth chat and people were arguing with a guy who didn't understand the fact that why do satellite dishes for receiving like satellite TV, he wouldn't acknowledge the fact that they point um, further down the more away from the equator you go,
Yeah.
whereas on the equator they point pretty much straight up like the actual signal path. And why is that? No answer. It's just
Yeah.
the brain just shuts down. And why if I tilt the dish away from pointing quite significantly up, commensurate to my latitude, the signal goes away.
And they can't answer because they haven't received the answer from their Papa Flurf.
Oh, right, yeah, that's true.
Uh, it's there's the stages of flurfing, and one is just parroting. Um, uh, but then it gets to they graduate up, and eventually they make up their own excuses, make up their own lies, invent stuff, and then when they're the higher level ones, when they've really graduated to the 33rd level, they can invent them on the fly.
Hmm, that's nice. I mean, I still marvel at the fact that if they have to dispense with the general principle of the scientific method, so if they have to just completely dispense with the idea of experiment confirming a theory,
Yeah.
then that's what they'll do. Um, it's I've seen a few debates where the speaker will try to nail them down on this, and they just won't. So they'll refuse the entire concept of model prediction measurement.
Yeah, they when I played the clip of Feynman saying, the essence of
Yes.
science is, you guess, that's the hypothesis, and you compute the consequences, and then you compare to observation or reality or experiment, right? And they don't see that is the outline of the scientific method,
Yeah.
right? But they want to take the scientific method and make it dogmatic, and say, well, you have to observe a naturally occurring process, and then like put a whole bunch of boundaries around it. Like nobody does that. You're just doing that so that you can reject things.
It's strange because because essentially the only thing that you could directly confirm, I would guess, would be stuff that you can perceive with your senses. So therefore, by that reasoning, you would never be able to tell that a clock is moving. Well, other than the second hand, I guess,
Yeah.
because you can't perceive the other hands moving. Oh, puppy's upset.
No, I have him sitting on my lap here,
Hmm.
right here, because he's feeling a little sad. He wants to be near me. He was walking around on the floor next to me, like, what am I doing? I wanna be up here. So anyway, so I got him on my lap,
Hmm.
and he just grunted. So if you heard a little noise, people, that was him.
Yeah, I still find it baffling how flat earthers are even able to reason about anything. Because if they reject the fundamental concept of forming a hypothesis, if they just rely on, I don't know, like subjective feeling. I mean, to be honest, it's really that, isn't it? Right?
Well, it's the dual standard,
Of course, yeah.
right? That's the third law of Flerf is the dual standard. Um, so they have this hyper. Some of them, not there's different tribes that have different ways, but some of them have this hyper rigid, dogmatic version of the scientific method that they employ to reject anything they don't like. But they don't use that in order to prove their belief in flat Earth. They just sometimes they're just like, oh, it's the default. You don't get to declare it's the default. Well, if you could declare a default, I can declare a default
Right,
with,
yeah.
with no evidence.
Yeah, my axioms are just as valid as anybody
Yeah,
else's at that point.
yeah. All right, puppy.
Oh, well, anyway, I hope I didn't bore everybody too hard with avionics talk.
Oh, it was very entertaining. I think for the people that are interested in it. Let me see here. Make sure there's nothing else that is kind of for you. Here we go. Baux said, I worked in airline network planning in Australia in the 90s. We only had 8 of 25 B737s that could fly Melbourne to Perth on Great Circle due to ETOPS.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, because
Yeah,
Melbourne to Perth. Oh, yeah, because a lot of that's south of Australia over the ocean.
yes. Although ETOPS to be, did he say B-52s or no?
737.
Oh, 737s. Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah. I misheard. Because I was about to say that ETOPS and ICAO don't really apply to military flights, but yeah, 737s absolutely. Um, the ETOPS requirements. So frequently you'll find you might be able to notice this when you go on a flight. Well, kind of depends on where you board or how you board, but frequently on the nose gear door of the aircraft, it'll have like ETOPS printed on it in order to allow the ramp agents and the ramp people that are manipulating with the aircraft to easily tell which aircraft they're at. So whether it's an
Oh,
ETOPS aircraft or not, because for ETOPS aircraft, you have different standard requirements for reliability and the minimum equipment list, or basically what can be broken on the aircraft. So if an aircraft's supposed to be operating within, uh, not within ETOPS, then it is allowed to have a little bit more faulty parts on it.
more faulty
As in,
parts.
oh yeah,
But
oh yeah, oh hang on, I got to show you.
hey,
Um, yes, sir, they absolutely do exist, and it's like a unicorn. An airplane with nothing broken on it does not exist. Yes, sir. We do absolutely have broken pieces on an airplane. Which one do we want to go? We want to go by FAA. So different regulatory bodies have different regulatory requirements on what can be borked on the thing. So I'm looking for that kind of a table-looking thing.
People, you,
Ah,
you
there we
said B-52. Now people are saying Love Shack and Rock Lobster.
go.
All
So
right.
here's your master minimum equipment list. It is organized by what we call ATA chapter, basically by like a subsystem. This is kind of a universal numbering scheme for aircraft subsystems that just allows for standardized manual layouts and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So say, for instance, we want to have something broken on the electrical equipment, or we've got something broken on the electrical equipment part. So that'll be in chapter 24. And we go to section 24. This is air conditioning, auto flight system, communications, still communications, a lot of communications. There we go, electrical power. So they say, for example, that you are allowed to fly with one of the engine generators. So the aircraft has, they call them integrated drive generators. Those are your primary electrical energy generators on board. So when the engines are running, you've got two generators running, and you are allowed to dispatch the airplane. You've got two installed. You may dispatch with one inoperable, and there's a maintenance and an operational procedure. And they then give you the set of conditions. So it may be inoperative, provided that inoperative generator 1-2 switch is selected to off. 8, the auxiliary power unit and its generator is operated continuously throughout the flight. The cross-side hydraulic AC motor pump is selected to on. Airplane is operated at or below flight level 200 is like 20,000 feet. If operative integrated drive generator or auxiliary power unit generators have part number something, 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 they must have more than 150 operating hours, and repairs are made after one flight.
So they
So
have to fix it before the next flight.
yes, so this is pretty much just a ferry, to be honest. So this is really just a ferry to your nearest servicing center.
Ah, I see.
And
Okay.
this will be dependent upon each aircraft type is going to have. You can actually look these up. The FAA published the master minimum equipment lists for almost every aircraft that's certified in the US.
All
So
right.
if
So
you want to know
here's
what,
a good question. Is one generator equivalent to one engine? No. Right?
more or
Because
less,
the engine still runs, it just doesn't generating electricity
yes,
for the electrical systems.
yes, but a lot of systems depend upon electrical power. On this particular aircraft, which is the Bombardier Challenger, you can actually fly the airplane completely dark with no electrical power at all,
Oh.
because yeah, it's somewhat of a legacy airframe in the sense that it is completely just hydraulic flight controls and hydromechanical control of the engines. So it can actually fly with no electrics at all. But on something like an Airbus A320, as soon as you lose all electrical power, you've pretty much got an unguided dart. So because it's a fly-by-wire airplane, so you've just got a little
Yeah.
side stick on the side there, and it just sends signals to a bunch of flight augmentation computers, and the
And they're
computers then
dead.
actually control the hydraulics. But it has multiple redundancies in that, so it's essentially the electrical system is pretty much quadruple redundant.
Yeah.
So hopefully never gonna. It doesn't happen, to be honest. A full blackout of an aircraft, of a transport category big aircraft, I'm not sure has ever happened.
Yeah. It's a lot of redundancy to make sure that's not an issue.
Yes,
So
like you've got entirely all of these aircraft have fully isolated dual electrical networks. So that's why if you look even down to little parts, like what ever wonder why all the landing gear legs, even on something like a 737 or an Airbus A320, you have always dual wheels on each of the trucks. And that's redundancy. Because if you have a blowout on one tire, you can actually still land on the other tire just fine. It is designed to take that load. Even on the nose wheel, which wouldn't actually need to be dual, it's still dual just because of the fact that what if we have a blowout or we lose pressure in one of the tires, you can still land on it just fine. You just got to get it serviced. And then there are other backups. That's why aircraft always, transport category aircraft always have to have two engines. And there is no point during a flight where a loss of a single engine would ever cause the airplane to like lose control or something. Even at any, there are entire books and volumes written on just subjects such as takeoff performance, and the entire takeoff profile, and pilots are drilled this every 6 months during training, is how to conduct a engine failure, a takeoff with one engine inoperative. So at any point during a takeoff, you can lose an engine and you can either come to a safe stop or you can continue to take off, come around and land.
So this is a very important question. Icy Spin says, can you fly backwards to save mileage for resale value?
If your airplane starts flying backwards, you've got troubles.
Yeah, but I was thinking it on the engines, they track by amount of time that it's been on, right? A lot of it.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
so the way to do it wouldn't be to fly backwards. It'd be you need to have a DeLorean and put the plane inside the DeLorean.
I mean, if you're flying backwards, the gearboxes are going to be spinning backwards. So I don't know. Maybe that'd make the counter go back.
Yeah. Would it make time go backward?
Well, it depends on how the clock is designed, right?
More research is needed.
Definitely, very much so. But generally, don't fly your aircraft backwards. There are cases actually where, so this is the thing I was talking about earlier with dynamic stability. Aircraft are pretty much designed such that if they are, so longitudinal stability, if they have a slight upset, either up or down, they will tend to return back to stabilized flight. Basically, they won't depart.
Yeah.
If they do, and certain aircraft, such as mostly fighters, are designed to be dynamically unstable, such that if they are displaced from their stable state, they actually will tend to continue on into the unstable state. And essentially, the aircraft is more stable flying ass first than face first. And then you need fly-by-wire computers and stability augmentation computers on the thing to stop the thing from departing controlled flight. Because if you do, well, reach for the ejection seat, basically.
So I remember playing a old flight simulator, Apple II, where it had wind, and it was some sort of a don't chew on that, Popper. Some sort of a like a biplane, so its takeoff speed was very low,
right?
And so you could take off into the wind, and it didn't account for inertia. So if your takeoff speed is 10 and the wind is 15, as soon as you took off, you went backwards at 5 instantly.
So that would still, yeah, okay, that would be a bit weird.
I mean, no inertia, but yeah, I mean, you potentially could do that in reality, but you could stay still and take off, essentially.
Yes, it's not just a theoretical thing. That does happen.
Yeah.
If I mean, there are videos out there. If you take something like a small Cessna 172, a little four-seater airplane, and you slow it down to pretty much its slowest speed that it can fly, which is like about 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
If you fly it high enough and in windy enough conditions, you can actually get wind that is faster than 70 miles an hour. So yes, you could actually be making negative progress towards your destination.
That's what it felt like yesterday in the wind across Nebraska.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot during Atlantic crossings going east to west, since most of the jet streams are going west to east.
Yeah.
So you can end up actually taking a pretty significant headwind of like almost 200 miles an hour. And it does affect the flight time.
Oh yeah.
Fuel burn.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the questions that are for you. So I'm going to say this was very
awesome.
Good. People are super interested in this. So maybe we can do another at some point.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, in that case, I'm gonna head out to bed. It's way too late here.
Yeah.
Or early.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Take it easy.
All right.
Cheers, everybody. Bye.
All right, so I've got some super chats to read here, so I'll read them. We've got Platonic Cuddler came in early on with a member super chat. Let me said thank to the Temple of Tune for Tuesday nights, and thank to Titicaca for its Tuesday as well. It's hard to read that. Korean Ball says it was all clouds in Toronto and Titicaca. Yeah, so when I looked at the map for the eclipse, it was like the only place that's guaranteed is Maine, and that's where Red's Rhetoric went. Red's Rhetoric and Astronomy Live went to Maine. Those guys are nuts. Icy Spin says, so crazy that the eclipse opportunities are like 5-minute window a decade. Question, did any flare show you how Flat Earth predicted it while you were there? No. No Flat Earthers predicted an eclipse. There are Flat Earthers that are adamant that it's done, that it's happened. But even the most basic thing, how high is the sun? How high is the moon? They can't answer that question. You ask them, and they all run away. And that's absolutely necessary just to figure out totality. So Stringer News 1 says, thanks Titicaca, MC Toon is back in Toontown. Thank you. Hey, puppy. Donkey, what are you doing? He's trying to dig through the floor underneath. Silly dog. Mr. Lonely said, don't stop till we see the nips. That was when I was showing my shirt. I don't think I'm going to do that. Yes, Angel Gamer, it is a new puppy. It's Donkey. What are you doing, Donkey? Where'd you go? Oh, he's over there. Puppy. No, he's trying to get out. All right. You don't. That's a different channel to see that one there, Mr. Lonely. Andreas Eld says, dearth for top left. Whatever is blocking the sun is behind it. Insane. He is just such a complete moron to just say something so ridiculous as that. Such desperation. Lord Illuminous Pooh says, I'm not an introvert or an extrovert or even an ambivert. I'm a what? I gotta go. Yes, I see what you did there. Lord Illuminous Pooh then again says, we all know the sun was swallowed by the great serpent and only by sacrificing my Virginia license. What do you mean, not a Virginia? A what? God, no. Your Virginia license. That's great. Good one. Icy Spin says, in my personal hell, Flat Earth, Flurf misunderstanding helicopters, planes, and our atmosphere is on loop. Hey, come here. Donkey, what are you doing? He really wants out. So we just got home today. So this dog is basically sat in the car and in the camper for a week. So, oh my goodness. All right, hold on. I'm going to have to pick him up. No. You can stick with me. All right, there we go. Just be right here. Be happy. Binge Thinker for $9.99 says puppy snacks. Well, thank you very much. We'll get him some puppy snacks. He was right. He was a stray and had brothers. Just the whole litter was boys. And when you put food down, it is a race to finish it, even though there's nobody there. So I don't know if that is something that we can break or if it's just a forever thing. But thank you for that. Freelance Minion, his 10th super chat says, ow, my ears. Kearney, North Nebraska is pronounced Kearney, like the primary career of its inhabitants. All right, well, Kearney, Nebraska it is. Matters Now is a new member at Newton. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah, you don't need to lick me. Antifarian says, hey, MC Toon. Hi, Alt Psi at Google. If you can and would be so kind as to give me access to those high-res photos of the eclipse, I'll wash your car. Thank you. So email me, and I'll just link you the folder of all the photos that I got. New Moon says, Mick, now you knows I was right and I won the challenge. What challenge did? Oh, the stars. You're wrong. With my iPhone, I got Venus, but Astronomy Live got some stars. So, I mean, you want to pay me? We didn't put money on it, but I won. Go look at Astronomy Live. He got some stars. So, Al-Khwarizmi algorithm says the first rule, not law, of Flurf, never ask a question that begins with if the Earth is flat. And that's true. They never want to test their hypothesis of flat Earth. I asked Jaron, what if both of us came up with a list of 5 things that would falsify our model? He had an excuse. He's like, well, of course there's nothing that, you could do. And then of course everything I would do is falsifiable, would be easy to falsify. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Why don't you do it? He didn't want to. So anyway, Serena's one says, walk. Who wants to go for a walk? It doesn't understand those words yet, but Penguin does. You say that, and she's up by the door trying to climb up the wall to grab the leash. So there you go. Okay. What do you think, puppy? So I think next week, let me pull it up. So I have a debate with Al from there it is, from Space Audits next week on relativity, specifically general relativity. If we had our first round, it was on special relativity back in, I think, November or December. So this was going to be like 2 weeks later. Well, it's been a bit. So Facty says, did you see the pictures of the partials that I captured? I did. And so did everybody that was watching earlier in the stream. Because I put yours up on screen. So thank you for them, Facty. So L. Bergen says that's a clue. What's a clue? That's a clue. All right. So, all right, people. I think that's about it for now. Like I said, if you would like me to come speak at your group, whatever group that is, school, church, the Rotary Club, let me know. MC2 at mc2.net, and I'd love to come and talk about it. So, are you ready to go, Donkey? All right. Anyway, people, thank you very much for tuning in. It was super good. Toto was very informative. I really enjoyed it. So I hope you did too. And we'll see you all next time. Here we go.
MC2, drop that beat.
All right. Let it flow. Let yourself go. So I know that is the tempo.
So, yeah, let's do this. So
let's do this. Yo, it's MC2, the debunking tycoon. I shatter flat earthers, make them face the moon. Your attempts are decent, but they'll swoon in the face of my logic like a deflated balloon.
Oh, MC2, the monsoon cartoons. On the real say, send it first to their dues. Your theories are like old brews, sweeping ignorance or just spreading the views.
FDFE stands for fumbling the facts, evidently. I drop truth bombs so splendidly. Your approach is soft, mine's unrelenting. I bring the science while you're just venting.
MC2, the buffoon with silver spoon. I tackle pseudoscience, make them change their tune. You're the sidekick, I'm the room. When it comes to debunking, I'm the room.
Dizzle, in the rizzle dizzle. But hey, FTFE, we share the creed to educate and debunk, plant the seed. Though in this rap, it's clear indeed I've got the upper hand in word and deed. All right, hold on a second. The Zoom call died. Everything died. No.